No.
It's pretty as red. It's got cut off program already.
County employees, that's all.
Yeah, but they told me I'm better.
Network is insane.
I drove it a week before I was bored.
Every time I come over here, they're email log in, we start finding network. We start.
So, just so everybody's clear what's going on, we're working with some technological stuff. We're getting close, but we ain't quite ready. So y'all just go ahead and talk amongst yourselves, and hopefully here in a minute or two, we will be ready and we'll get this show on the road.
You want to make a comment about, or something about the sign-in sheets?
But somebody,
So we've also got two things. We'll do some housekeeping while we're sitting here. Looks like everybody's sitting. Okay, all right, got that. Now, there's two things going on as far as talking to this group. One is public comments, which nobody has signed up to talk about, just generic general stuff. We're going to have a public hearing about a proposed LCID landfill, and we've got some folks signed up to talk about that. Now, does anybody here want to speak to this board about other than the LCID proposed landfill? Good. All right. That gives me some faith in humanity.
no secret, yeah. Big one. It don't do it. You saying radio? Oh, no, the red, no. The motor is, or not red, but the red. Yeah, it's kind of like stutters. And they say it's cylinder drop.
I'm sure you can relate. Weird. The company I work for, I just That's crazy. Converting So, I saw probably this young kid, he's like recent grad. He like called way more than my standing. Western North Carolina, it's thousands of I follow him on Facebook. He was getting updates on so it snowed and it was in the 20s. It was in the 80s. They had like little microburst tornadoes. And then there was those places were like literally experiencing which I'm looking for.
What I read.
I've actually been wanting this.
Like everything else.
I was set to do it last year, but you might remember this. I had a tree fall. Literally the day before it snowed.
On my list.
Yeah, I had to tell my house. Cancel my house.
Not to talk to somebody that's done that. My parents have
Yeah.
exactly right.
How old is this?
I was just surprised to hear goals. Wow. Changed out the H
Yeah, I've talked to a few people. Most recently, one of my best friends.
You got the one.
Air quality in the house, whatever it is, ability to cool the house, like if they're gone, and the thermostat's on, and they come home, and they're like, oh, it's pretty hot. You know, the air one big downfall is it came so early on in like technology. If you would like spray foam or bottle,
Yeah, they don't have those.
Good to go?
We ready?
We're ready.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. The March 2026 meeting of the Alamance County Planning Board will come to order. You had a chance to get the roll, Mr. Director.
Yes, sir. We have 7 present. That's more than a quorum to conduct business.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to read over the minutes from last month's meeting? Good. Anybody have any questions? Adjustments? Corrections? I'll make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, a motion and a second on the minutes. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Okay. We just talked about this a little bit ago. Nobody signed up for generic public comments. We still good with that? We're moving on. Old business, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I anticipate this will be quick. I've just got a couple brief updates. If the board members have any additional discussion, we can certainly entertain that. But as you may recall, at the last meeting, I entertained just draft changes to Article 6.14 and Article 7, the definitions. The only additional changes since then were to 6.14.2, item F. We removed the language, kind of the duplicative language about land use spacing, since we clarified the buffer requirements and talked about how that could be duplicative and possibly confusing. And then in Article 7, we amended the draft definition for construction activities. This may come up again at the end of the meeting. But we amended that to remove the words clearing, grubbing, and grading from the second paragraph. There's also a new definition there for direct access, which reads, quote, approaching or entering a property by virtue of the fact that it fronts or abuts a public or private road. Direct access shall not be achieved if approaching or entering a property is required by first traveling through another property or through access easements or other arrangements that exist between a property and a public or private road. So this is obviously led to quite a bit of debate in January. We touched on it at the last meeting, and again, that's just draft status for the future. Then we also incorporated the other terms that we looked at the last meetings for accessory dwellings, secondary residences, and short-term rentals. Incorporated those alphabetically. So that's all I've got on old business.
Everybody clear on that? Everybody got anything you want to say? We ready to move on?
Chair, I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
So in the RV setback section, which is going to be section E, which is what we were discussing at the last meeting, it mentions here that any portion of the development exists within 50 feet of a public road, and the landscaping buffer of at least 30 feet must be maintained along the perimeter of the park.
So is that 6.14.2E?
It is.
Yes.
So when that does exist, does that mean that that must surround the entire park, or just the part at which it borders the road?
Yeah, the way that it's written, it would just be the portion that borders the public road.
Okay.
Yep.
Because it does seem as though it could imply that it would be the entire property, in my opinion.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Where it says along the perimeter of the park, it seems
Correct.
like it.
It does not
Okay.
distinguish that.
Okay. So we need to clarify that the 30-foot buffer would only apply at the public road. The buffer is specific to the
I
public
think if
road.
that's the intent, we need to be clear.
Adjoining the public road.
Okay. Thank you. Yep.
Sure. And in old business with definitions,
Mhm.
go ahead and discuss that as well. Being the old business.
I forgot to mention too that I took out any references to heights for fences.
Absolutely.
We had talked about fences.
Absolutely.
I forgot to mention that just a moment ago. Was that going to be your question?
Actually, no, under the definition for applicant. It reads, a person, firm, or corporation who is the legal owner of the property or a representative acting on behalf of an owner.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, a lot of times, ownership of a property is not obtained until after a rezoning occurs, or after approval has occurred. Many times, property owners are very reluctant to be involved in the process because of neighbors, friends, and the community.
Mm-hmm.
Can we put in, and acting on behalf or permission?
With the consent of the owner?
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
That's definitely the intent, and I don't know the statutory reference right now, but, you know, it's very common that with the consent of the owner, a developer would engage in the development.
Sure.
Obviously, the owner has to consent at the outset of the project, but that's the intent there, but we can certainly clarify that.
Yeah, because the way it reads now, acting on behalf would seem as though they were involved in the process more than just giving permission. And I know that sometimes property owners can be very sensitive with that issue.
Sure.
So you had discussed briefly about direct access.
Mm-hmm.
Other arrangements. What could an other arrangement be under that definition?
Well, we talk about easements in there, right? I think
Yes.
other arrangements is really just kind of an unforeseen
Catch-all?
arrangement, and part of it too is, and this may come up with your final item tonight under new business, is an attempt to guarantee that, really for industrial development specifically, that the access would come off of the allowed state-maintained road, that there would not be any kind of secondary entrance where on the application you could show that you're providing access on the allowed state-maintained road, but then in reality, once your business is in operation, you're coming in a back entrance or a gravel road or some other easement or something like that. So that's really the intent there, if that makes sense. And like I said, that's kind of part of, if we get there tonight, that's part of what we'll discuss again with those 6.5 amendments.
I was racking my, when I seen other arrangements, I'm thinking, what could that be?
Right. And it's really just kind of a catch-all term
Okay.
for what it's not.
One more question, if I may. Manufactured homes, and I apologize, I missed this the last time this was on the agenda. We have, I noticed that we are looking to put different classes for manufactured homes.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering what the reason may be behind that. I was trying to find a relevance within the development ordinance for those different classes, and I couldn't locate one.
Yeah, so this actually comes from, I'm not sure if it comes from the building code, but I think it comes from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Absolutely.
They provide for classifications of manufactured homes. The big difference with manufactured homes is there was a federal law passed, I think in 74 or 75,
Yeah.
and then shortly thereafter took effect. And it required a minimum for like framing standards, roof slope, windows, insulation, things of that nature. And basically, as it is today, if you go to set a pre-1976
Yes.
mobile home on your lot, you can't even get a permit for that. Building inspections wouldn't even grant a permit for that. So I'm trying to remember, we added that several months ago, or maybe coming up on a year ago now, when we were talking about mobile homes, and I don't remember exactly why we talked about why it would be beneficial.
And I don't
to add
remember.
that.
It may be
Part of it
before my
is
time.
the building permit dynamic. And I think what we're just trying to do there is come into line with what other ordinances have, what other local governments have, and in line with either the building code or the U.S. categorization of those classes.
But we were classifying a single wide different than a double wide, and then one built before 1974. I understand the one built before 74, but the distinction between, it's not going to be relevant within the development ordinance as to whether you can use a Class A or Class B. I'm just trying to understand the relevance from breaking them out, because a single wide could be up to 18 foot in width, whereas a double wide starts out at about 20 or 22, it could go to 40.
Mm-hmm.
Are we is this going to be an interpretation thing if we, in the future, say this particular area only has Class A or Class B?
Yeah, that's definitely not the
I mean,
intent. I think when it
just-
comes to A, B, and C, if I remember correctly, and again, it's been several months since we really got into this, we try to just match those up directly with the federal classification. So Class A is nothing more than a single wide. Class B is nothing more than a double wide.
Okay.
The intent is definitely not to create new categories and then have new regulations from the county. It's more just to match those existing classifications.
Okay.
Yeah. We can definitely revisit it. I think you're asking some excellent questions. And I apologize. I'm trying to remember, the part of it too is, I think when we dealt with that, we have an old ordinance in the UDO that deals with like the storage of dead manufactured homes. And I think
Right.
they make a reference to classes there. but then we didn't have any match for classifications in the definitions.
Oh, that would make sense.
So we
and
tried to
I
match,
May
yeah.
have missed that.
So I think that's how, the history on that. So I think we tried to match in the definitions what the ordinance was trying to say when it spoke to classifications.
Because I'm used to seeing, you know, after 1974, if it's actually meets HUD standards, it's a single wide, double wide. It's
Right.
not a modular that meets North Carolina Building Code or North Carolina Code compliant dwelling.
Right.
And that distinction I see, but the distinction of the category
Yeah.
of single wide, double wide before 1974, and then all other.
Yeah. Well, let's,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
I think let's definitely bookmark that and we can revisit it before we do a final passage on this.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? You ready to move into new business?
I'm ready when you are.
Put your seatbelts on.
Did we, yeah, we went through public comments.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get that motion. Go into public hearing.
Say, well, we're going into the agenda.
I move we open public hearing.
I move that we open the public hearing on the Philippi LCID landfill.
Second.
A motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so procedurally on this, we're gonna let Matthew give us his overview. And everybody's clear on where we are, how we got here, what's going on. Then we're gonna have some public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been told by IT it may be better if I'm over here. So I'm going to be over here if that's all right. Everybody hear me okay and see the screens okay? All right, so I have a rather lengthy presentation for you tonight, but in the interest of time, I will try to move through it rather quickly. So really what I've got for you here is just the Philippi LCID landfill intent to construct application packet, kind of broken down point by point. What I'm intending to do here is a comparison through UDO Article 6.5 section by section as we review the application. The documents I'm going to refer to are the compliance schedule version 1.1, the civil site plan, and other related documents. Excuse me just a moment, please. I'm sorry. I think I might need this. All right, so before I really get into it, I think it's important to note for the planning board members that after Mr. Philippi withdrew his previous application, he filed a recombination plat with us and then with the Register of Deeds to combine a portion of the property closest to Clap Mill Road into the larger subject property here, directly connecting it to Clap Mill Road. And you can see the highlighted section of the map on the right. This plat is recorded at Book 86, page 195, with the Alamance County Register of Deeds. So just beginning, I'm just going to go point by point through the compliance document that the developers had submitted. 6.5.1 here deals with applicability. The applicant has acknowledged that a land clearing and inert debris landfill qualifies, and they are therefore subject to this ordinance. That's found on page 1 of the UDO compliance schedule. 6.5.2, regulated land uses and exceptions. These are the classified land uses that the HIDO spells out, as well as some exceptions for agricultural and excuse me, residential uses. The applicant has acknowledged that an LCID landfill constitutes a Class 1 use and that it is neither an agricultural farming operation or a residential land use. That as well is on page 1 of the compliance schedule. 6.5.3, regulations and standards. Minimum lot size required for a Class 1 use is 10 acres, at least 10 acres. The current property size, again, after the recombination, is 99.03 acres. This information is on sheet 1A of the project civil site plan set. 6.5.3 also sets a limitation on building heights. There are no proposed structures for this project. That's on page 1 of the compliance schedule. Section C there requires land use spacing, but that's only for Class 2 and Class 3 categories. So since this is Class 1, it is not subject to a land use spacing. That's on page 1 of the compliance schedule. There's also an option here for a land use or a land spacing waiver. That is not sought after and not required because, again, land use spacing is not relevant to Class 1 facilities. That is detailed on page 2 of the compliance schedule. Moving over into the operation setback area. So there is a required 150-foot operation setback buffer for Class 1 uses. You can see that highlighted and depicted here on the map. That is shown on sheets 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the civil and site plan set. Traffic impact analysis. This was debated quite extensively in the previous meeting. This is subsection F here. All or access to all regulated industries shall be directly from a state-maintained road. All industries regulated by this section shall be required to demonstrate if their proposed heavy industrial use would create an amount of traffic in terms of vehicle trips per day that would push the road beyond the practical carrying capacity as defined by the North Carolina Department of Transportation. And that's partly why, again, we touched on this definition earlier, but perhaps by the end of tonight, we'll get back to that question of direct access. So this was part of the previous application and comes in again. This is the traffic impact analysis conducted by the engineering firm that is found in Appendix B of the compliance schedule. Here they state, as Clap Mill Road will remain well above studied capacity for level of service D with the additional proposed LCID landfill, it is our professional opinion that the proposed landfill will not push the road by which the industry is gaining access over practical carrying capacity. This was submitted with our application packet in mid-February, and shortly after that, I don't remember exactly when, we were asked about, or a citizen had submitted a comment or provided an inquiry about a possible speed limit change to Clap Mill Road. I had emailed NCDOT District Engineer Chuck Edwards either on February the 18th or the 19th, and this was his response. I know that font is rather small, so I'll read it for you here in just a second. His email states that the department will be initiating the following with approximate timelines noted regardless of the county's determination on approval of the proposed LCID. Point 1, an ordinance and post reduced speed limit from 55 to 45 miles per hour within the next 6 to 8 weeks. Point number 2, to install trucks entering highway signs at existing commercial access and other warning and advisory signs along Clap Mill Road corridor as warranted based on traffic engineer assessment, also 6 to 8 weeks. And finally, to widen travel lanes on the inside of curves and resurface the entire length of Clap Mill Road from Highway 62 to Kimesville Road within calendar year 2026. After we received this email, we got back in touch with the applicants and basically said there's a very high likelihood that even if your intent to construct permit is approved, between then and when your operations permit is approved, based on that 6 to 8 week timeline, the speed limit is going to be reduced from 55 to 45 miles per hour. And so we asked the applicant if they could run a new analysis based on the new or the projected 45 mile per hour speed limit. They did that and then some. They ran analyses at 55, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, and 15 miles per hour. All that is found on page 65 of the application packet. The relevant information here is that at 45 miles per hour, the per day carrying capacity for the road will be 12,100 vehicles. When you cross that analysis with an expected additional 73 trucks per day to the site an existing 600 vehicles per day, according to NCDOT data, 673 vehicles against 12,100 for carrying capacity. Average daily trip usage total would be 4.96%. The trucks added to the road would be an additional 0.64%. So maximum usage against carrying capacity would be 5.6%. Again, this is on page 65 of the application packet. Subsection G, operations area. The following areas shall not be allowed in the designated area of operations. Item 1, any area located within a special flood hazard area. Item 2, any areas classified as wetlands or woody swamps by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Item 3, any areas designated by the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission as habitat for identified species of greatest conservation need. Excuse me. The applicant has provided site maps on sheets 1, 1A, 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the civil site plan, noting that the flood hazard area is located outside of the area of operations. For item 2, regarding wetlands and woody swamps, they've provided a letter from Wetland Solutions LLC dated December 5th, 2025, confirming, quote, no areas meet the required criteria for jurisdictional wetlands observed within the area of operations. That is Appendix C of the compliance schedule. And then finally, regarding the Wildlife Resource Commission and sensitive species, letter from North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources dated July 10th, 2024. This was added. We should have this should be passed out as the final item in your agenda packet tonight. Quote here, a query of the NCNHP database indicates that there are no records for rare species, important natural communities, natural areas, and or conservation/managed areas within the proposed project boundary. That's on page 2 of the compliance schedule, and again, handed out, should be the final page in your agenda packet tonight. Subsection 8, stream setbacks. The ordinance requires a 100-foot stream buffer setback that is depicted here. That is referenced on page 2 of the compliance schedule, sheets 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the civil site plan. The next subsection is on landscaping and screening. All industries regulated by this section shall be required to provide a landscaping and screening plan. Screening shall be a minimum of 50 feet for a Class 1 use. Class 1 uses, for Class 1 uses, the screening shall consist of a minimum of 2 staggered rows. Planting shall be a minimum of 8 feet on center, with a maximum of 10 feet on center, and be at least 36 to 48 inches tall and in 7-gallon size buckets at time of installation. As part of the review process, the planning director may, at their discretion, consider existing screening and vegetation on the property. So I want to touch on existing screening first, because that is the majority of it here, and what's not is covered by the next section. The green areas there's a kind of a smaller highlight there, I'm not sure why, but the green areas represent an existing 50-foot landscape buffer around the perimeter of the property. And the quote from the site plan, existing 50-foot landscape buffer meets or exceeds the requirement and or intent of the county ordinance. That's on page 2 of the UDO compliance schedule, and can be seen on sheets 1 and 3 of the civil site plan. There is one feature that does encroach in that landscape buffer, and that is sediment basin 1 that we had discussed either in the November or the January meeting. That is depicted closely here on sheet 3 of the civil and site plan set. However, in Appendix A of the UDO compliance schedule, the applicant has included their operational buffer restoration planting plan for the encroachment remedy. Specifically, this would include 2 staggered rows of plants, 10 centers of the following: loblolly pine, American holly, sweet gum, for a total of 36 trees per row. 35 trees per row, 70 total. And the planting shall be at least 36 to 48 inches tall in 7-gallon size containers. Rows will be spaced 10 to 12 feet apart. Again, that's on page 2 in Appendix A of the compliance schedule. Subsection J, gating and fencing. The highlighted note here on the site plan is, quote, a proposed 6-foot fence with posts spaced 25 feet apart. That is found on page 2 of the compliance schedule and sheet 1 of the civil site plan. Excuse me. Also on gating and fencing, there's a requirement that it shall be completely enclosed by a minimum of 6-foot high fence with a self-locking gate. The highlighted section in the top left of this map is, quote, self-locking gate entrance to the area of operations. And in the bottom right, you will see detailed for a security gate profile with a double swing type fence. Additional detail, a commercial gate latch self-locking style. The manufacturer is Nationwide Industries, and the model is Keystone Panic Latch KLP MNP KLP P2BK. That is found, and I think the particulars there are because that model will indicate that it's a self-locking, or the industry term we've found out is a self-latching gate. But that's on page 3 of the UDO compliance schedule, sheet 2A of the civil site plan. I know we're having a lot of fun here. Everybody doing okay? Next subsection is lighting. Access ways, walkways, and parking areas shall be lighted adequately by lighting fixtures. Applicants are encouraged to use light shielding and fixtures that are approved by the International Dark Sky Association. Dotted throughout the top of the site plan there, you will see path lighting spread features mounted atop 16-foot poles and spaced 300 feet apart. Mounted lighting fixtures typical. The detail in the bottom left, commercial luminaire fixtures, spread path type, manufacturer and model Luminarc PRVP, approved by Dark Sky International. That's found on page 3 of the UDO compliance schedule and sheet 2A of the civil site plan. Next subsection requires compliance with other governmental regulations. This is found in Appendix D. Permits include NCDOT driveway permit, erosion and sediment control plan, intent to construct permit to be determined, and land clearing and inert debris landfill permit also to be determined. Other studies, determinations of miscellaneous items. Alamance County site visits, we'll detail that in a future slide. The wetlands determination. Cultural resource and endangered / threatened species determination, and the groundwater study. That is in page 3 and Appendix D of the compliance schedule. Very similar to this, the ordinance requires that an applicant conduct a pre-application meeting with staff at least 14 days prior to submitting their intent to construct permit. This meeting happened, excuse me just a moment, this meeting took place on January the 23rd. And the applicant submitted the following compliance list. It lists basically all the same permits that you saw on the previous slide. That is on page 3 and Appendix E of the UDO compliance schedule. Okay. Next section in the ordinance is 6.5.4, permitting procedures. Intent to construct permit. An intent to construct development permit shall be required before the owner or operator of a regulated industry commences with any construction activities. And again, that's a definition we briefly touched on earlier and may get into later. This is a memorandum that, if you'll recall, we had, after the November public hearing, staff had conducted a site visit on December the 16th, and this memo was sent to you on December the 31st. That is in Appendix F of the UDO compliance schedule. The applicant also requested that staff conduct at least one additional visit in the lead up to tonight's public hearing for ongoing determination that no construction activities were taking place. And so we did that. So the photo on the left is this is into the future phase 1 of the area of operations, as you'll see on the civil site plan. standing roughly at the portion of the road in the middle of the property, facing southeast, if I remember correctly. So the photo on the left was taken February 24th, 2026. We intentionally did that because it was 2 days before the TRC meeting. The photo on the right was taken yesterday. We intentionally did that because it would precede tonight's public hearing. This photo is pointed into phase 2 of the pending area of operations. Photo on the left again from the 24th before the TRC meeting, and the photo on the right was yesterday in advance of tonight's public hearing. All right. The ordinance next requires that public hearing notice take place prior to a public hearing. This was an item that we debated, or at least went over in some detail during the November meeting. The ordinance seems to give a little bit of conflicting guidance as to whether it is the developer's responsibility solely for public hearing, or if it is staff and the developer's responsibility to notice the public hearing. So this time around, we did both. So the statute makes, or the ordinance makes reference to General Statute 160D 406B, which is the notice of hearing for a quasi-judicial procedure. This is not a quasi-judicial procedure, it's a public hearing. Nevertheless, the guidance that we're given is that the notice must be deposited in the mail at least 10 to 25 days prior to the hearing. That must go to all abutting property owners. And the local government must prominently post a sign at the site that is subject to the public hearing. On the right-hand side, you will see a letter that we sent to all property owners notifying them of the public hearing that was sent on February the 27th, 13 days prior to the public hearing. For the sake of maximum transparency, we included a QR code that residents could scan to pull up all of these documents. We also gave them instructions to contact the planning department if they had any issues with the QR code or wanted to come by and see the documents in person. On the bottom left there, you'll see that we posted a sign at the property also on February 27th, also 13 days before tonight's public hearing. That same section later goes on to instruct the applicant on their hearing requirements, and that notice of public hearing draft document is included in Appendix H of the UDO compliance schedule. The guidance there is, again, that it be not less than 25 days, but no more, less than 10 days, but no more than 25 days prior to the hearing. This is a photo of the public hearing notice that ran in the Alamance News on February the 19th. The next subsection goes on to talk about applicants shall cause notice to be mailed or emailed or delivered to each newspaper, wire service, radio station, and television station that has filed a written request for service. This email went to the Alamance News, Burlington Times News, Alamance Chamber of Commerce, Spectrum News, nclocal.org, WBAG Radio, FMY News 2, Fox 8, and that should be news tips at WWII12.com. Sorry for the typo. That is found on page 7 of the application packet under related documents. The applicant also posted a sign at the property on February the 19th and emailed us confirmation of that posting. We responded to clarify the location, and they followed up with the photo in the middle with the small yellow square at the southern entrance of the driveway. As you see there, sub-item 3 requires the applicant to prominently post notice at the site. That is found on page 68 and 69 of the application packet. The same section requires to send out the public hearing to all parcels of land abutting the parcel, to the any properties that may be located within the spacing limit. Again, this is class 1, so there is no land use spacing requirement, and then residents of those structures. These are the certified mail receipts included with the application packet, pages 70 to 74 in the application packet. And then the same section requires mail notice to holders of any utilities or easements. The applicant identified Duke Power as holding an easement here, and that information is on page 4 and Appendix H of the compliance schedule. One thing that's interesting to note here too, so the very next section, so the applicant gets guidance that they have to send out mailed notice between 10 and 25 days prior to the hearing. The next section here, lowercase Roman numeral 6, notice of the public hearing shall be mailed by the applicant at least 21 days prior to the public hearing. So we touched on this in November. It seems to give them two different time parameters for guidance. These notices were mailed out on February the 18th, which is exactly 22 days prior to tonight's hearing, so that they would be compliant with both the 10 to 25 day notice period and the 21-day restriction period. Those are found on page 70 to 74 of the application packet. We're getting close to the end here, I promise. Next subsection, the planning board, that's you, shall hold a public hearing on the application. At this public hearing, the regulated industry and community members may comment on the application. The next subsection deals with groundwater and well studies. The applicant included this groundwater and well study with two related maps in Appendix N of the compliance schedule. That's pages 50 to 52. And we are very close to the end. So this is really where we are tonight. Subsection 3 here, item 1. Completed applications shall be presented to the planning board for a public hearing and determination of compliance with the requirements of the ordinance. If the planning board determines that the application is compliant with the ordinance, the planning board shall forward its approval recommendation to the Board of Commissioners for final approval. If the planning board determines that the application is not compliant with the requirements of the ordinance, the planning board shall issue a written determination of the reasons and deny the application. That's all I got for you.
That was very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to go sit and drink some water and not talk for a few minutes.
Take a breather.
You're from the public now. You good with that?
I think so.
Okay, so now we get to the official public comment portion. Now, I've got a list of people here signed up to speak. There's gonna be a timer up here, 3 minutes. Tell us what you want us to know in 3 minutes. We want to hear everybody's thoughts. We only want to hear them once. So I don't need 5 people saying, we do want french fries with our cheeseburger. We just need to hear the french fries one time. So, Bob and Pam Gowdy, 3907 Platte Mill.
It may be,
You're in the other
it may be an
Okay.
overflow.
All right, here we go.
This is just a sample. I'm Pam. Bob. Gowdy. You got it right. That was great. Let me
I had
see.
help.
Yeah, oh, okay. Yes, you've probably gotten emails from me too. Thank you for letting us speak, and I am here today to express my strong opposition to the proposed landfill permit for the Platte Mill Road area. Our community is already saturated with landfills, and the proposed site threatens the quality of life for long-standing homeowners and landowners. There are several critical concerns regarding this project: zoning and protection. We urge the adoption of protective zoning for Platte Mill Road to preserve the integrity of our residential area. Environmental impact. This project poses significant risks to water quality through potential contamination and will degrade air quality due to smoke, ash, and the debris. The safety. The increased heavy traffic raises serious safety concerns for residents entering and exiting their driveways. community opposition, there is a significant public controversy and active petition circulating against this permit. Approving this permit would not only destroy the natural beauty and peace of our properties. We have worked hard for our homes and deserve to have our environment and safety protected from the impact of this money pit. I have spent many hours sending emails and making calls to protect this community, so please do the right thing and reject this permit. What is the plan for oversight if it is approved, and how will the county address this inevitable consequences? Thank you.
And I just wanted to touch on the traffic. You know, I've read over the UDO about the traffic capacity, and I don't agree with it. And I've done a lot of my own study, and it's quite different than what it says, because there was nothing really taken into account what that road is actually like. It's just a general consensus that it's a rolling contour. And nothing in the capacity was mentioned about the trucks themselves. It just said vehicles. Nothing about the size or weight of the trucks that go down there. And my own personal observation, it's much different than what their calculated one was as far as the amount of traffic and what the percentage is. My percentage of the trucks now, and this landfill's not even open yet, this is just for the other two, the trucks represent 30% of the traffic on that road. Okay, and I didn't bring it, but I have photographic evidence that a lot of these trucks are not capable of staying in the lane, because we live on ground zero, Clap Mill Road. We are in the S-curve. Since we've lived there, there's been numerous accidents over the year that didn't involve trucks, but they did involve people driving too fast, because the road is just not made for that. The speed limit of 45 is just too high. Coming from 62, there's a blind hill. The first driveway that you would encounter is less than 100 feet. So somebody making a right turn out of there could be overrun by a truck that was running 45 miles an hour. They would not be able to stop. The other is the smoke and ash. We talked to a lot of people, and as far as Highway 62, people have complained about the heavy smoke. Okay, there are over 200 houses that are affected by this landfill and the other existing landfills.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have to say.
Excuse me for interrupting. Somewhere we've dropped the ball here, but we're a little over 3 minutes.
Okay.
So do
Sorry.
we not have the timer?
I didn't know I was even.
Okay, I'm finished.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Robin Hart, not Robin Hart.
You said that last time.
Okay.
Pass these down. Members of the board, I'd like to speak about the potential degradation of the water quality. It's a little bit different than what was just mentioned of the proposed landfill, that the proposed landfill site presents. We live near the southern border of the proposed landfill site on Cobb Road. And like every other community in the region, we saw heavy rain and flooding in 2024 and August of 25. The northern prong of the Stinking Quarter Creek borders our property, which was heavily flooded, as well as our pond, which required days of emergency draining during the event, and for months afterward was fouled with dark brown murky water from repeated inundation. The north prong of the Stinking Quarter Creek also flows through the proposed landfill, as we all know. A cursory internet search, just cursory AI search of just where the water from the Stinking Quarter Creek flows reveals that the tributaries of the Greater and Little Alamance Creek is where they flow into. And as many of us might know here, those two creeks are the major tributaries of the Lake McIntosh, the reservoir of drinking water for this town. That's what the map shows. Now, you can only imagine what kind of health and environmental disaster could occur should the proposed landfill become inundated in the next prolonged flooding event. Maybe this next year, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. These landfills have a lifetime lifetime of maybe 20 years, you know, and then after that, nobody can assure us that they're not going to continue, start that leachate process of actually, you know, becoming one with whatever bodies of water are nearby. I read the information on the preliminary subsurface investigation conducted by the Wilson Engineering Group for Mr. Philippi, and I understand that only 7 of the 15 required test pits were dug for evidence of an pre-existing groundwater table, and of those 7, nothing that wasn't found. There was no groundwater table. The report cites the Division of Waste Management requirement is that no debris be deposited within 4 feet of the existing groundwater table, and that proposed borrow pit will be adjusted to meet this requirement. But has the site been proven to have adequate water separation between the landfill and the local wells? Have all the local potable wells within a specific radius been mapped and their depths surveyed? Has something as simple as the direction of the groundwater flow been determined to demonstrate that the landfill is not directly flowing toward residential wells? Will we local neighbors know that the landfill's eventual leachate water is not impacting the aquifer?
And that's 3 minutes.
That's my thing, and I'd like you guys to assure us that, you know, is this a safe thing to do if it goes through? What's going to happen to the water of this city eventually? I heard you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Actually, he and I are going to switch. I'm Carol Davis. I'm after him. May I go now?
Sorry with me.
I sent y'all a list of what I'm going to talk about. So if you have that, you can refer to it. My name's Carol Davis. I'm an adjoining landowner, and I am here to point out violations of the UDO in the existing landfill application. The first violation that I'd like to talk about is Sediment Basin 1. We talked about that, actually Mr. Hoagland talked about that. It's located currently entirely in the 150-foot setback buffer between the area of operations and the property line. While it is hoped that that will be a temporary sediment basin, the plan clearly states that that it may be converted to a permanent stormwater control measure, which, according to UDO, stormwater control measures are part of the area of operation. So if this is converted after the fact, you know, after it's there, we can say, "Up, too late, it's already there." So I submit that that is a violation of the UDO. The next one is another violation of the operation setback. The UDO states that no area of operations or internal roadways may be located in the operation setback area. The last 200 feet of the LCID gravel access road are in the 150-foot setback between the area of operations and the Nicotin property line. The road occupies the operation setback and is therefore a violation. The third point, again, is along the same lines of the LCID gravel access road. The application omits the LCID gravel access road from the designated area of operations, and this omission creates 2 possible interpretations of the plan, and both interpretations violate the UDO. The first one we just talked about, the last 200 feet of the road are in the operation setback. So that's scenario 1. If it is not in the area of our operations, it's in the operation setback. Scenario 2 is the LCID gravel access is area of operations. In that case, it violates the operation setbacks for the Nicotin property line and Philippi property lines, the McMahon property line, the Sallow and Tierney property line, and the Gammon property line. These are within 15 to 112 feet of the road the property lines are located. All those distances fail the 150-foot setback. In addition, the stream, the Jacks Creek stream, is essentially within 90 feet of the LCID access road. And then if the LCID access road is area of operations, it's supposed to be fenced and gated. I submit that LCID access road is area of operations because it will be the most used portion of that landfill. Every truck coming into the landfill will go down the road and come back out the road. So without the road, there is no way to conduct business. An area of operations is defined as saying it's buildings, structures, parking, equipment, storage, stormwater control measures, and other uses necessary for the business of the industry. So I submit that the road is area of operations, and on the basis of these 4 UDO violations, I would urge you to deny this permit.
Okay, I will continue with violations to the current application. Since the first meeting we've had here, all of us as residents have had the same question from the beginning. What operations are taking place on this site, and by what permit are they allowed to do that within the county of Alamance, Alamance County's UDO? So after 2 emails we sent to the planning director, one from our attorney, one from myself, I've got copies of both of them, we having got no responses from him about those 2 questions. What's going on this site, and how are they permitted and allowed to conduct it? We see trucks come and go every day. These people that live beside the site on that road, they've seen trucks taking out dirt, taking in waste, taking out processed waste, a lot of activity on this site. So without getting any answers, after 2 months, 3 months of it trying, we decided to pursue these answers ourselves. Excuse me. What we have found, and just starting with the title to the site plan, it's a borrow pit and LCID landfill. Well, there's people have seen dirt leaving the site. We were told the first night that this is going to be an excavation of dirt, removal of dirt, and backfilled with waste. So we know it's a borrow pit. Borrow pit is a Class 2 operation in your HIDO. It's called a resource extraction. I submitted to you guys the verbatim definition. It's removal of topsoil and fill dirt for a commercial activity. That's what's going on the site. The setbacks are supposed to be 150 feet from protected dwellings, which are homes, and there's about 3 houses that fall between the property line and 150 feet. The second activities we have confirmed are going on this site, and we've confirmed them by pulling the state. 1, we've observed them. 2, we have drone evidence. 3, we've seen the trucks coming and going. 4, we've got the applications from the state that approved them at the state level, but they have never been approved by this county. Those activities are incinerating, composting, consolidating, and then 3rd is consolidating waste and processing transportation to the final site. These activities fall under Class 3 HIDO activity of waste facility. When you go to the definition of waste facility, there is no definition of exactly waste facility. It is waste processing facility. Waste processing facilities, the first 2 activities are incineration, which has been conducted for over a year, and composting, which, they've been given a permit to compost by the state through their yard waste notification permit. So we've confirmed those activities are going on the site. We still want to know by who and when were they permitted by Alamance County to do this. We still have not gotten a response. We've witnessed them. We've asked for the application. Mr. Planning Director, can you tell us when that? Maybe the only evidence we've found of any approval has been a zoning verification letter that came from the county. I want to submit it to you now because it says that it says there's no zoning that restricts this use, but we can find no evidence that these uses are allowed. We contend that this application does not include all the activities that are on the site or going to be planned for the site because they're all being applied for and reapplied for and approved. So the application has to be denied. It does not include all the activities on the site. It's incomplete. And then we'll see if they come back with a correct application, can it meet the ordinance of Class 2 and 3 operations? And we hope you will agree with us. The facts are the facts, and thank you for your time. We contend that you should deny this, and thank you for your service to the county and to the residents. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Rent, line, Barry.
Can I submit a copy of the letter? Okay. I brought some, sorry, excuse me. I brought some copies.
This is mine.
Hey guys, I had something wrote up, but seeing what some of the other people have said up here has kind of changed my mind. So a couple of things that I want to point out, or at least bring up for the board to consider, is one, with the heavy industrial, again, this was my grievance in November, is the lack of an impact study as far as where the air quality is an impact, whether the noise is an impact. I feel that this county needs to do better about doing an impact study so they know who they need to notify, not just the adjoining plots of land. The noise is going to be miles away and impacting other people. So that's one thing. And as far as the notification of the hearing, I see this as a bare minimum. Some of the signs that are on the side of the road are 2x3 signs with over 60 words on it. None of them are placed in a place where you can actually stop and read them without being sitting in the middle of the road. At 40 miles an hour, nobody can see these whatsoever. My second point would be is this 99 acres that we're talking about right now, Mr. Philippi already owns over 200 acres now behind Jacks Creek Trail. This is one step in a long amount of steps that he's going to continue trying to enlarge this site. This is not going to be the end of it. And we're talking about all the capacity of the road and everything else. We're talking about a half of a 99 acres right now. What happens whenever this gets opened up to all 200 acres plus? One of the other issue that I have with the road capacity is everything that I've seen in that documentation is for a 24-hour period, not operating hours. We see hundreds of trucks a day on Clap Mill whenever it's busy. Taking a capacity study or whatever over 24 hours, it's not open over 24 hours. So that capacity study needs to be done for the amount of working hours that it has and the expected trucks that are going in and out of there. And the fourth thing that I'll bring up is we have multiple residents, and to no offense, we have some aging residents that have driveways with sight lines less than 100 yards in both directions on this road. With these big trucks running 45 or 55 miles an hour. I oppose this. I think it's the wrong place. I think it's the wrong road. And just the impact to the surrounding area, I just don't think it's right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Alan, Figas? Is that right? Okay. Mr. Allen. 42, right, okay.
I want to thank you for the time. This will be redundant, but I just wanted to say that I'm strongly opposed to this application. Obviously, there's enough existing landfill capacity in that space in Alamance County. It detracts from the county overall. We'll just talk about the quality of life. The battlefield is less than a mile away. You've got over 2,000 acres of county parks and lakes, less than 4 miles away. You've got 2 elementary schools less than 4 miles away. The opposition continues to grow. I imagine we'll continue to fight. You can see the people in this room, and we're going to need a bigger ante room. And so far, from what I've seen, the only people in favor of this are on Mr. Filippi's payroll. So, yeah. Look at the support, look at the pros, look at the cons. My grandmother always said, you can tell somebody by their friends, right? So, Mr. Filippi's are all on his payroll. That's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Get my check, boy. Get that check.
Betty Slade, Regulator Drive? Okay. I'm sorry the pen run out on you.
It did. It broke, and then I tried to get another one. Anyhow, my name is Betty Slade, and I live on Regulator Drive, the corner of Clap Mill and Regulator Drive, and just right behind Timesville Road. And everything that I need to talk about has been mentioned, but I beg you to please consider the quality of our lives. We have lived there, my family, 48 years, and it was a quiet, nice community. You could take your dog for a walk. You don't go near Clap Mill Road. Those trucks are flying up and down that road all day long. And I can sit and look out one window, and just Monday, I counted 5 trucks flying down that road in less than 5 minutes. So when you're talking about how many trucks are going down there, I don't know how they're measuring them, but it's an awful lot. And it is, they're supposed to be working from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5. We see trucks going down there way after 5. And then the other thing, when they're hauling their dirt back up to take to the one on Timesville Road, there is so much dirt on them, and they're not covered, and it's windy, and the trucks are flying. So we've got everything we've talked about, the dust, the smoke, the ash. I can go out to my back furniture, the white furniture. I can rub my finger, and it's black. And I have stood there and seen stuff falling, and I'm like, that is ash. It's ash falling in the air. And we have to live with that. And it's detrimental to our physical health and our mental health. Because I don't know how many times if I get up at night for something, then I go to bed and I'm thinking about all this mess. Because it's so unfair. It's unfair to the people that have built the new homes at Jacks Creek. I don't know those people, but I've been down there, and they're beautiful homes, and they say their children can't even go outside and play at certain times. And this is not fair, and we beg you to please deny this permit. And I don't understand the permit. If they're trying to get a permit, why are they operating? We see trucks going in that driveway. I've seen them, and people have pictures of them. So they are in operation. And I thank you for your time, and I hope you deny this permit. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Larry Salo. Word had to meet over there.
Larry Salo, 4244 Jacks Creek Trail. I just want to say I hope we can come to a business decision tonight. And the reason I say that is because at the end of last meeting, when I think it was this lady here wanted to make a motion, everybody looked at each other like they were afraid of saying yes and afraid of saying no, which tells me there was emotion involved. There should not be any emotion in a business decision. If Mr. Phillippe is your friend, I don't know if he is or not, but if he's your friend, he'll be your friend after a business decision, especially one that's guided by rules and regulations that you have to follow. That's my main point. And the other point is that came up tonight, I don't know the gentleman there gave the speech. You mentioned the amended abutting to a private road now? Is that what you said?
As a draft.
As a draft, okay. Because I don't think that should affect this application. It should affect future ones, but not this one. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'm going to get it right this time, Ms. Colon.
Yes. Or does it Ka or Cole? It doesn't matter. Hi, my name is Calandra Salo at 4244 Jacks Creek Trail. We moved here in July of last year, and we actually bought we split a lot of land between myself and a neighbor because we didn't want to have to worry about setbacks, right? Because we know about setbacks. So just speaking about the class 2 or class 3, one of your responsibilities is to have that technical review, right? That's your responsibility. And combined with local representation should shape the options presented to the commissioners. And so the fact that we're the ones that have to say, look at his application, it says he's going to do X, Y, and Z, right? Where's the technical review? And so our lot is within, it's like the 90 feet, it's outside that buffer zone. But it's unfair that other people that, they're going to build that basin 150 within the buffer zone. But if you allow that, then that's going to open up for other people to come in and want to do similar things within the setbacks. So that's the other thing to consider. It's not just this particular setback within the zone. Once you allow that, then it starts setting a precedent what you do down the road. We faced that where we lived before. Somebody built a house within the setbacks. They actually had to go back and have them cut off half the house. Because if they allowed him to keep the house the way that it was built, even after they approved it, it was going to set a precedence in the town that they couldn't afford to do. So what I'm asking is that you guys, hopefully before you came into the meeting, you already knew about the class 2 and class 3, that you've already checked those boxes, that you already have your decision. And that it should be based on the technical review. And the presentation that was given did not mention all the setbacks, you talked about the level 1, but it's not a level 1. And that's a big misstep. And if that's approved, you have just set the precedence going forward for everybody else, because they're going to use this as their starting point. So, like my husband said, this should be a business decision, and I love politics, but it should not be. It should be about, did you check every single box? Did you do that with him?
Thank you. Scott Eli. Is he in the other room also? 3814 Clap Mill Road. You want to wait on it? You want to go ahead and talk? Henry Vines. Walk fast. I've already started your time.
All right. My name is Henry Vines, and I live on 3450 Isaac Drive. As y'all all well know, I'm very familiar with y'all. I was on this board when all this started. I would like to speak to you tonight about the UDO and about the HIDO. All these things came about to try to protect the citizens from these industrial operations coming into play. This is not going to solve a problem. When you have these ordinances that come in play, they just address just one certain issue. What is going to happen to an individual? You got a piece of property here. This man owns this piece of property. And I sympathize with this man because I myself have been under that same kind of scrutiny. I can buy this land from Mr. Philippi, if he'll sell it to me, 125 acres. And I can go back there and I can put 25 chicken houses on it. Do y'all think y'all would be happy with me having 25 chicken houses right next to this resident? I'm sure you wouldn't. Because I'm gonna be hauling 200-300 loads of chicken manure down that road to go spread. So the issue here is that we need a form of zoning in this county so that everyone knows what can happen next to you. It's not about protecting one against the other. It's knowing what can happen. If I have my chicken houses here and you come and buy land next to me and you want to put 100 houses on it and then you want to shut me down, that's wrong. And you can't do it because there is no zoning in this county. So therefore, I mean, I've toyed with this thing, I've lost sleep over this thing. And I certainly understand what Mr. Philippi is going through, and I mean, because he has the right to use his land like he sees fit. I know that this traffic that's going to be there is going to be bad. But I asked folks that live there, what did you think about when they built these 24 houses up through there, and about 60 cars started coming down your road? What if he sold this piece of property to someone and they put 150 to 200 houses and you had 200 cars coming down that road? Would you be happy about that? What we need in this county is zoning so that we can protect citizens' rights on both sides of the street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Scott, he made an appearance, he's not. Okay. Paul Coons.
I see that Smokey went running when a lawyer came up here. Just a little humor. Like the mood. My name is Paul Kuntz. I'm an attorney here in Alamance County. If I make it to this summer, I've been practicing 31 years here. We've got an office in Burlington, Ortel, Kuntz and Ortel. And I appreciate everybody coming out, even if you disagree with us and voicing your concerns. I'm only going to speak to a couple of them because most of them are really zoning type concerns. We don't want the use there. We don't like the use there. And you don't have a zoning ordinance. So, you know, that's a waste of time in the conversation. I appreciate the comments, but the reality is legally there's no zoning. And thank you for putting everything on YouTube. Nice to go back and watch them, and I appreciate all your comments on that subject as well. The only issues that were raised that really relate to the vote are gravel access road and resource extraction that were brought up. And just remember, you guys put LCID landfill in a class 1. And you knew that for an LCID landfill to be constructed, you were going to have to dig some dirt. So the action of performing the permit cannot cause a violation to the permit. It's impossible. And I know opposition wants to turn that into somehow resource extraction. That is neither the intent nor the language of the ordinance that doing the construction to build the LCID landfill would somehow violate it. In other words, you'd have to move the whole thing down into a class 2 if you were going to do that. The other one is gravel access road. They want us, we've got to have access to get to the site where we're doing the work. The only place that we're actually doing the work that is a LCID landfill is within the buffers. The gravel drive and the access to it cannot be part of it, because today you can go out there and drive back and forth on it all day long and not have any violation. I thought Matt did a phenomenal job of going through the details of this. I want to point out, and if you don't think you as the public have gotten anything out of this, let me tell you what you have gotten. Go back and look at the last couple of LCID landfill applications and how many pages they were. They were basically a site plan. in a 5-second conversation with an engineer who came up here. This is a 72-page document, point by point, extra notice. This applicant has gone above and beyond the I's and the T's. They have covered every piece of this. They've done it in part because you've raised even more issues, but because this planning staff is on top of this TRC process and going through this entire application in detail and forcing the applicant to work hard on this. Real quickly, I'll say the other thing you got was NCDOT, who controls the roads, making improvements to it and lowering the speed limit, which you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Thank you, and we're here to answer any questions that the board may have of us. Thanks.
We are too.
Okay. Scott Eli.
Can we check another room?
If you don't mind, just to make sure. Now, is anybody in here that didn't sign up to speak to this board but wants to? Maybe we ought to have a prayer meeting right quick. We got a consensus like that. There you go.
Hello. Just back there listening. Hey, Kenneth. Michael McMahon. I live right next door to Kenneth. I met Kenneth 4.5 years ago or so when he was doing the site work next door, and he's one of the reasons, or the reason why I moved in. My friend of mine was with me, and we both met Kenneth, and Kenneth he was a great guy. He's proven himself above and beyond, like that gentleman said. He has gone above and beyond to try to please everyone. He bought this property years ago with this intent. He told me his goal, he told me his dream. When I had problems with dust and whatnot, I spoke to Kenneth. I asked Kenneth, did anybody talk to you, Kenneth? Did anybody bring up these issues with you? No. He's not an unapproachable man. I mean, I went out on a limb and I talked to him, and I told him how I felt. And I said, this can either go one way or the other. And it didn't go the other way, like I told him tonight when we talked earlier. I said, Kenneth, if you haven't been the solid person that you are, I'd have a sign in my yard and I'd be against you too. But I'm giving you time and I'm giving you patience. You're a young man. What guy buys this much land who's busted his butt his whole life and nobody's giving him anything? It's like that man said, this is your land. You can do what you want, and that's what you thought, and you never thought you'd have this much pushback. I'm not excited to live next door to it, but we knew that you'd have trucks, and I knew, this is Alamance County, and this is how it rolls. If I don't like it, I can move, and that's really the only options I have. I have a great neighbor like Kenneth is, and his family, and everybody around him, his whole circle. I didn't like what that man said, that Kenneth doesn't have friends, that he's got friends, and he's got people behind him. And the reason why there are more trucks is because Kenneth is a good guy, and because he is he's a great business person, and people like him because he does what he says he's going to do. He told me he's going to put a road in. He's going to put a road in. He did irrigation for me. Everything I've said, he's tried to work with me, and I put trees in. My place is beautiful. I'm the one who picked up the trash right across the street from the church, from that wreck. I stopped my truck, all that trash. All these people care about the whole neighborhood. I'm the one who stopped my truck and put all that trash in the back and brought it to the dump. I care about the neighborhood. I don't want to see people doing 90 miles an hour down my street either. It's very disrespectful. And if they smash into one of his trucks, that's kind of the reason why I like the trucks, is because they slow these cars down. I hear cars bottoming out in front of my house. I mean, it's insane how fast. I see blurs go by. I can't even look out my front window. I mean, that's what I'm really here about, is the disrespect of the neighborhood. The shooting at the nighttime when I first moved in there, and nobody in here did anything about it, that lives in Jack Creek Trail, and blowing tannerite at night. You can't tell me that nobody heard it, but nobody did anything. I got involved. I don't want to. I don't want to be up here, but, I don't want to see him get bashed either. He asked me if I could reach out and help him, and I've always told him I'd be back, he'd have his back, so. That's all I got to say is, I wish the guy luck, the best of luck. I'm sorry that people aren't happy with what he's doing, but this is his goal, his dream, his family. He, provides jobs for people. He's good to people in the neighborhood. I got nothing but kudos to say for Kenneth. So. Attaboy. Don't give up, Kenneth. One thing you can't do is give up.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, we good to close the public hearing?
If you've heard from everyone, yes.
Can I say something? Gave the opportunity after this gentleman spoke. Can I please say something? Because I'm sitting here and I just listened to that gentleman and I appreciate what he has to say and as far as speaking. My name's Joe Snyder. I live on Cobb Road. I want to make a point because, man, my blood pressure just went up because that gentleman was very succinct about his relationship with Kenneth, and I appreciate that. But I don't think that's what we're putting on the table here. I have no ill feelings for Kenneth. I don't think anybody who spoke here has. And I don't want it to be a cheerleading episode. That we're talking about people's lives. We're talking about UDOs. We're talking about permits. We're talking about requirements. This cannot be personal. I certainly don't want to go there. I have no dislike for him. I don't think anybody, again, in this room does. I appreciate that this gentleman has this relationship with him. But we have to stay focused on is whether or not this is legally sound and morally, I believe, too, sound. Thank you.
All right, now while she's coming up, is anybody else? I'm gonna take that as a no. Okay.
Okay. I've spoken before, and my concern is, like the rest, that the application looks like it's correct, and or they may think it is, and yet we have evidence when a person when signs are stolen out of your at your home, and when things we see are not according to what they're supposed to be, what makes us think that the landfill is going to be run without danger? I have a picture of the water coming from the driveway onto the road when it rains. A big puddle, not a little puddle, a big puddle. We have expressed our danger. We have expressed our thoughts, our fear of what this is all about. We can make things look good on a piece of paper, but it has to be done that way. And we don't feel like it's going to be, because it has not been yet done that way. So I ask that you oppose it, because things already are not in the place that they are supposed to be. It is not according to what they are supposed to be. Actions are not where the paper is. Thank you.
I gotta go, man.
Let's go.
Thank you for coming.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I will second that. All right, motion and a second, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so the public hearing's closed. Now, have you got anything you want to add, Mr. Director?
I do not.
Okay. So, Tom?
I just have a question and a comment to make, a couple of comments to make. If it's possible, I'd like to have Bob and Pam Good come back into the room, Alan Figus and Betty Slade. Brent Library, you're still here, right? Brent Library? I'd like for them to step in. I have a question to ask those people, please. They'll come back in the room.
Yeah.
Gowdy, okay, I'm sorry. Gowdy.
Gowdy like howdy. That's what she told me. She told me that first time I met her. Gowdy like howdy.
I'd like to thank you for coming back in the room. Back in November, I heard from 4 people complaining about ash content, and I found one of those people to be incredible, but Whitney Love, Brent Lineberry, and Alan Figus I found to be credible, and also the people who spoke here tonight. I just got one question to ask the citizens. Have you experienced ash on your property since July, the month of July?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I've seen it on my car.
Since July?
And it's
Since
not normal
in
ash.
the-
It
yeah.
smudges whenever you start
Yeah.
wiping on it.
If it gets wet, it'll run black down the back. My car is white, so it'll run a black line going down from that ash. And I tried to take the pictures, but they didn't show up good. But it was on the window, the windshields. And yes, I have been in my yard and seen that fine ash in the air, and I swear to that.
But we've had ash since April of last year.
But you've had ash since July, is what my question is, July of this year, of last year.
It was probably, when I took those pictures, it was probably maybe a month and a half ago.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving me that. I had thank you so much. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
And just one other comment to Mrs. Davis, Mr. Kirkpatrick, you have done a lot of work on this. You really have. The only thing that, and I'm going to admit to this to you now, the information that you have worked so hard to put together only got to me at 6 p.m. tonight, so I haven't even read it. So I hope somebody has read this and will have a comment for it in the meeting. And I know, Mr. Kirkpatrick, you had a lawyer here last month before it, and I didn't even know he was coming until I got here. I don't know that this will continue, probably decided tonight, but I just really urge you, if you want to get your point across, please get the information to the planning board sooner than you are before the meeting, please. I know you got it to by March the 9th. That's not enough time to get it to us. I didn't open my email. You got it to me on the 13th, on the 11th. And I didn't open it till tonight. So I just want you to know that.
We sent them on the 9th. We were told they wouldn't go in with your package regardless. So if we got, whether we sent them that Friday or we sent them that Monday, that's what we were told. So they said they would be sending directly as public comment. So.
Mr. Davis, I read yours a little bit, but Mr. Kirkpatrick, I hadn't had time to read yours, but I hope somebody has and could comment on it.
I'll be
It's
glad
been a lot of
to.
work to it.
It just revalidates that these are class 2 and 3 operations, and they're not in the application can be denied. And they're verbatim right out of the definitions. You track the activity to the definitions. It's a direct link.
That's the question I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Anybody else?
You know I'm full of questions. Matthew,
Yes, ma'am.
can you go over the process of an LCID permitting process and what's required? If we approve this application tonight, what are the next steps before Mr. Phillips can open his operations per the state of North Carolina?
So I can't speak in depth to the state's permitting requirements. I can speak to the county permitting requirements. So again, as I mentioned in the presentation, if you were to approve tonight, then basically you're just making a recommendation for approval that goes to the county commissioners. The county commissioners have the ultimate administrative authority for final approval, but that's just on the intent to construct permit. Once the intent to construct permit is issued, then the applicant has a year, basically, if I'm remembering that correctly, to commence construction with the actual development. Once construction is commenced and they feel that they have satisfied the build-out of the property in the way that the ordinance and that the permits require, we conduct a site visit. They're also required to do a follow-up as-built site survey and submit copies to us. And if everything complies at that point, including verification of state permits, then we would issue what's known as an operation permit, and he can actually begin his business.
So there is a point where there has to be something issued from the state level, and they have a review process also.
Correct, yeah, and that's why there's the pre-application meeting aspect of our process and the other documentation requirements. So the applicant has to inform us of what state, local, local, state, and federal permits are required in totality. We have to verify that all of those are met prior to the issuance of the operations.
Of the operations,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
not the intent to construct.
That's correct.
Is, I think I see.
Well, and in a way they can't, because again, we also have a prohibition on construction activities, so they would be violating that if they fulfill the obligations of those other permits prior to the operations permit.
I mean, there's some things in here that I have concerns about from a state level, but they're not on our level, and
Yeah.
that's not our ball of wax, so to speak. One of the other things that you brought up, and I just want to ask, I've read these plans, I looked at them. I looked at them in my office in a bigger format. This is not extremely easy to read. They're not nice big plans. This is a temporary sediment basin that's in the setbacks. It's within your 150-foot setback, correct? I don't see any conversion timeline in the construction sequencing anywhere. Is this temporary until the landfill is closed? Is that the implication here?
So for that technical answer, I'm going to refer you to the engineers that put it together. My understanding is that, so the ordinance talks about those types of required features can be in the operation setback if they are basically related to another state or federal permit. And so if the state is going to require that type of sediment erosion control, and that's the feature that's required for that approval, then that would be an element that would be allowed in the operation setback. In terms of the specific timetable of it, I think, like I said, they could probably answer that question, and it's going to be dependent.
If it's
going
not
to be
on these
dependent upon
plans, then it's not into my
yeah,
consideration.
broadly speaking, it's going to
so-
be dependent upon the NCDEQ
Yeah.
determination on
Okay.
that and the schedule that they set.
So one of the things that you brought up about this was the planting
Yes.
on this temporary, and it clearly says that this planting won't occur until it's converted to permanent.
Correct.
So there will be no landscape buffer during the temporary time between the sediment pond and the adjacent property.
Just in that small area for sediment basin 1. The entire rest of the perimeter will have the existing.
Right. I'm just talking
Yep.
about this temporary sediment basin.
Yes, ma'am.
And from what I'm reading here, when it's converted, it will have these plantings
Correct.
as described.
Correct.
I'm not, okay,
Yep.
okay, all right.
But I think the question is if it's converted to a.
It says on the plans that it will be converted. It doesn't give a timeline.
But it also says that it may be made a permanent stormwater control measure.
Right. I mean, with applications like this, you have to go by what's in the plans and what's presented from you. Things that are added verbally.
Well, but that's in the plan, on the page where the sediment basin is.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but anything verbally added, it's not part of the documents, and we vote on the documents, so it's just coincidental, in my opinion, so.
It's in the document.
So, at the end of the day, you're not gonna be able to consider that buffer because it's not gonna be there until it's permanently converted, and that's just what it is, so.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Could you please give Matt to explain the other side of this thing? That is, if the permit is denied tonight, what the process is after that for Mr. Phillips? Could you please get him to explain that process?
You understand his question?
I do. So again, the ordinance requires that if you deny if you vote to recommend it / deny, that must be made in writing. The ordinance is not particularly clear about what happens from there. I think we talked about this a little bit in previous meetings. I think he could appeal that decision to the Board of Adjustment. He could wipe the slate clean and reapply, similar to what happened between, January and now. There may be some third or fourth option I'm not thinking of, but this is probably worth noting as well. So we don't have strict guidance on this in the local ordinance, but there was a session law passed late last year that basically does not allow for local governments to institute any type of a timetable for applicants that are denied for permits. So if he were to be denied, I don't think legally, even if we had it in black and white text, we could say you have to wait X number of days to reapply. He could basically reapply immediately. Does that answer the question?
But he has the right to appeal, is what I'm trying. Mr. President has the right to appeal if it's denied, because if it's denied, he either can appeal or he can reapply. But he has that option of appealing this.
There might be a third option in there.
Well, I'm just saying that, and so that we all understand, what these things can lead to.
And it might involve somebody wiring a real high-tech black choir rod with a wooden hammer. Called a judge.
One other quick question I forgot to ask.
Yes,
In
ma'am.
Appendix N, which is the water test, this is a letter dated November the 13th, and it says that, following the public hearing on November the 13th, 25, the required number of test pits will be completed to depths no less than 4 feet. We haven't received any documentation other than this November letter that those were completed.
No, and I think if you go on to read here, they specifically say that they're, based on their understanding after the November public hearing, for a cessation of any construction activities, then they would wait to resume until the intent to construct permit is issued.
All right, so we're calling that construction activities.
Well, the definition of construction activities, as you remember, is very broad.
No, I remember.
It technically
We had
includes
this
surveys.
discussion.
So,
We had that discussion.
Yeah.
Question, Sheriff, if I may follow
Yes,
up
sir.
on that. They did dig approximately 6 to 7 holes, I think it was 6, that were all deemed to be successful digs.
7 is cited in the
7,
letter.
okay. And of course, they will dig the remaining ones upon the permit being approved.
And re-examine the ones that were dug for depth.
Excellent.
We just simply could not disturb that much area without having an erosion control permit, and then with the cessation of construction, we couldn't bench to dig to the depth we wanted to determine the high water table.
Not small holes, are they?
Not necessarily small, but we want to be thorough, and we need to
They're
dig
pretty
it
sized
up.
holes.
We haven't had an opportunity to go out and determine that,
Mhm.
simply because we're being accused of construction activities.
Sure, understood.
Which is by no means the case. We've done everything we could to comply with every jot and tittle required.
Understood. Matthew, follow up.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's
Sorry,
important
yes,
to
sir.
mention. Thanks.
I'm so used to Amy. I'm so used to Amy peppering me with questions. Sorry about that.
So I think it's important to mention. 'Cause
You did this to me.
I'm sorry.
there was a concern, you touched upon this, and I think it's worth bringing up again, that certain elements that are required for this operation to exist can occur in that buffer.
Yeah, so if you look at,
Yes.
6.5.3E,
Design elements may be located within the operation setback when required.
when required
As a
as a
condition.
condition of other local, state, or federal permits. So if the state requirement is that location there for that purpose.
And also to follow up and talk a little bit about a driveway in not having to meet the required setbacks, because you have to have access to the site. It's
Yeah.
not part of the operation area, it's access to the operation area.
Sure. So the language in the ordinance says no area of operations or internal roadways may be located within the operations area, operations setback area. That's all the guidance we have to go upon. I think Ms. Davis raises an interesting point and has an interesting perspective. I think logic would dictate that you have to have access into your property in order to operate it. When I read that, I really think about someone constructing a roadway around the perimeter so that it may be a little bit easier to get to this area or that area, or that a roadway would be, if it did exist in that area and existed in that perimeter, then it may encroach upon the vegetative buffer or defeat the purpose of trying to steer traffic away from neighboring properties. So the ordinance doesn't give us much guidance on those types of roadways.
Other than that distinction of internal.
Correct.
Which would imply within the area of operation.
Correct. I think it would be great if the ordinance said something like, where roadways intersect to enter an area of operations, they must be done so as perpendicular as possible. If we had some more concise language like that, would be great. But without that, we have to kind of infer the meaning of the ordinance. My inference is it's trying to not allow a developer to basically create a perimeter road in violation of the other features of the setback and the buffer and the vegetation. Does that answer your question?
It does, thanks, it does.
But the area of operations is defined as other uses necessary for the business of the industry. And without trucks coming in or going out, there is no business of this industry. So, I mean, the road is essential to the execution of the industry. Without the road, I mean, are they gonna unload it, Platte Mill Road, and carry this stuff in? You're right, the UDO is very quiet on roads.
Right.
And, it doesn't make much point, so hence, other uses.
And my concern with that is, whether there's roads that's internally, but access to a site is no different than your driveway at your home. You have to have access. It can't meet the same setbacks. You have to have that access or there's no use. If that was part of the setback agreement, then we wouldn't even be having a conversation about any development. It can't be. You have to have access to, whether that's a residence, a dwelling, a business, an industry, and it can't follow those same setbacks that the actual operation area or the building is required to
Residents
follow.
are heavy industrial uses.
Right.
So that's not applicable. I mean, that analogy does not, there's no application of that analogy.
Industry is a business.
Heavy industrial.
Yes,
Totally different.
it's a business. Every business has to have access or
I think this
drive.
is a debate we're gonna have to continue to vet out.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's not right yet.
Future conversation as well, yes.
So let's expand upon roadways. As there's no road profile on the plans to tell us what that driveway construction is, and to my understanding it was existing.
Yeah.
The fire marshal is part of the TRC, and has he been to the site to verify? So one of the things is life safety, and we're talking about burning stuff, and that leads to fires and yada, 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 so.
Yeah, I can't recall if they specifically visited the site, but we did get an approved proof roll as part of the TRC process that the fire marshal signed.
I mean, because normally you see a road profile if it's being constructed.
Right.
And you would have a fire marshal say, I need 8 inches of whatever, and so forth.
So getting back, one more thing, if I may. Could you give me a, just for everyone here to define what we're actually considering as far as LCID landfill and what that material is going to be that would be allowed if approved?
So LCID landfills or inert debris landfills, you're talking about yard waste and trees and stumps and brush and vegetation, natural kind of organic materials.
So is it yard waste or is it land clearing?
Yes.
I mean, yes, both?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe interject, asphalt and shingles, asphalt shingles.
So
Concrete
stone, yeah,
asphalt.
there's stone is in the definition of inert debris, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Right. Brick and block as long as it's not painted.
Yeah.
Okay. That does it. Thank you, Matt.
Yes, sir.
For me. Chair.
They're accepting those now, and that's why it's a waste facility.
Just one question. We're listening. Sorry. Matthew, I know these letters came into your office. Did anybody investigate these letters at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we were on limited time.
Understood.
Mr. Kirkpatrick called me, I believe, on Wednesday. I'm sorry that I missed that call. my wife and I were at the doctor's for a ultrasound. We spoke on Thursday, and we took his perspective on the issue very seriously. We began almost immediately. We reached out to NCDEQ for definition or interpretation. Spent a good amount of time on last Friday on the issue. Reached out to legal to have them look at it as well. I did some additional research over the weekend. I had a conversation with a representative from NCDEQ Monday morning, and talked with Mr. Philippi and these gentlemen Monday as well. In the process of that conversation, saying, basically conveying to them that an interpretation of our definition of waste processing facilities, which is technically different than waste facilities, right? The UDO specifically says waste facilities. The different definition in the back is waste processing facilities, but it does include incinerators. That conversation was, this interpretation may kick you into a class 3 category, or we may have to do some type of stop work on current operations, what have you. In that conversation, Mr. Philippi said, why don't I just remove the burner from the property? And did that between Monday when we spoke and Wednesday afternoon when we did that site visit. So as of right now, at least as of yesterday, that burner, the air curtain burner, is not on the property. There's no incineration taking place.
Now,
Then in a that's all right, I didn't mean to cut you off, but in a follow-up conversation that we had, I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, these items and these public comments came after the board had already received the agenda packet and the intent to construct permit, and after everything regarding the public hearing was already in motion. So part of it was, if this determination is going to be made at this point, it's just going to have to be the planning board making a determination on the approval or denial of the permit. Right. Did you have anything you wanted to add on that line? You covered it. But yeah, we took that line of inquiry very seriously.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I never got a response to my email in either one of the emails in which we inquired about. This is a waste facility. They're incinerating, composting, and processing materials. The definitions match verbatim. I've got 2 emails. I've got them with me that I sent. I never got a response back. I made a phone call myself a week before this package was about to go in, and I verbally reminded him again, Class 2, resource extraction, field dirt removal from the site. Regardless of what anybody says, you don't move dirt for free. It's too expensive. You move it on site one time, but you don't move it off site. It's going for somewhere to get paid. So that's a commercial operation. There's no doubt. Resource extraction, Class 2, incineration, composting, and the processing, receiving of waste and processing it to be sold again. That is an all Class 3 operation. I said, why is it not Class 3? We've got 2 emails and we've never got a response. I asked him verbally. I had to call him again to get a response, and he told me we had agreed to move the incinerator. The rest of it would have to be decided at this meeting. So there's been actually plenty of time to notice. I know he's a very busy man, but it's not from a lack of communication, and it's just a lack of response. So we still don't know why this operation. So we have the same question we had when we came in here in December, November. What are they doing, and how are they allowed to do it? Well, what we found out is they're not in compliance. If there's no.
We're reopening the public hearing. Are we going to be able to reply along with this? That seems
Sure.
like where you're going back, you've already closed it.
Yeah, no, here, just.
So I spelled it out verbatim in that memo, and you can track the definitions right through it. And the permits, they have state permits to do these things, but they've never gotten they've never been permitted by Alamance County through the HIDA, section 6.5. I don't know if that zoning compliance levy was maybe someone felt like that was their note of compliance from the county, but these need to be permitted Class 2 and 3 uses. So this application needs to include these activities, or it's incorrect. Yes, sir. These activities are being conducted and they need to be permitted. They're not permitted, so they need to stop until they are. And this application needs to be corrected to include them. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, as the chairman of this board, I'm gonna ask you, Mr. Coons, would you please address that?
I'll be glad to. I mean, I think I already have, but just remember, we've applied for a specific permit, the LCID permit, to operate an LCID on that location. It's a great question about what the process is from here, because we haven't built anything out there, right? We have to go through the entire process of approval from the state of North Carolina, including continual follow-ups by Alamance County. And we have to comply every step of the way throughout this process. All of this conversation is about what might be and what could be. But all along the way, Alamance County has oversight, state of North Carolina has oversight. And we've got to match all of those permits with anything that we put out there. There's nothing hidden about this process. Again, I'm going to say, a 72-page application. The last two that you approved with a site plan.
That's not true.
It is true.
No, it's not.
It wasn't like this.
I'm afraid you're wrong, so.
I'm afraid you're wrong. And what I'm getting at is, we have hit every single INT that has been put from, and will continue to. All right? Kenneth has been operating another facility for 10 years without any
Hang on
problems.
just a second. Henry, now you sat on this board long enough to know this is rude. Let him speak, please.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
but I mean, okay.
Excuse me.
All I'm saying is, from the beginning and all the way through this process, for the last 10 years, Kenneth's been operating his other location down in Connersville. He's met every requirement, has met every inspection, and will continue to. This is not just a one-day, one-night decision. This is them following up and following through with county requirements and state requirements. And there's going to be places where those requirements conflict. And we're going to have to deal with the state, and we're going to have to sort that out. Construction is never a perfect process. The ideas that have been put forth, and I know I said this before, is if you take the arguments about soil removal or roads would mean literally that you could not build an LCID landfill. Period. You couldn't comply. If you couldn't move the dirt, you couldn't comply. This is not resource extraction. This is not Martin Marietta and Snow Canyon. Okay? Now, and I know that there's been attempts to modify the ordinance as we go. You know, we've got the right as the applicant to choose which set of rules we follow if they get changed. And what we were looking for is a vote, one way or the other. Ultimately, the decision sits with the county commissioners, which is where we would go next. In my opinion, and I appreciate all your work, it is an advisory opinion. It is not a final decision. I have been in front of boards over the last 30 years, and every municipality in this county, planning boards make a decision, and they advise the county commissioners. If they say, no, we don't want it, look, I've lost no votes at planning board, city of Burlington, no votes at planning board in Mebane. It goes to city council, they vote on it, and they approve it or they don't approve it. Sometimes it goes the other way too. So I don't really think that there is an appeal process to this. I think the next step is the county commissioners, either way. So, and we'll be ready for that hearing whenever they put it on the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, point of clarification. Mr. Koontz, you've introduced yourself, and you've said you're an attorney, but you haven't said for the record who you represent. And I know it's implied.
I'm representing the applicant. I'm sorry.
I know it's implied, but I think for the record you ought to state who you are here for.
I am. I'm representing the applicant in this matter.
So, could either you or Mr. Engineer clarify for this board and this room the difference between a burner, an air curtain burner, and an incinerator? Or could you tell us that they're exactly the same thing? Just so we're all clear.
You want me to take that, or you won't take that?
Well, you know what I showed you earlier?
Yeah.
About the incinerator takes fuel to process the waste or trash, whatever. Mine just blows air. It's an air burner.
But neither are on site.
That's
Well, there's not, but there's been a lot of talk about incineration. We're incinerating. I've heard that term tonight several times. And I just want everybody, particularly on this board, but in this room, to understand the difference between an incinerator and a burner. Because you could very easily make the case that we've got a wood stove in the house and we built a fire in it, and nobody's looking, we open the door, we throw a bag of trash in there and open the draft up, and we incinerate that trash so we don't have to haul it off. And that would be technically correct, because you've got fuel in there, you've got a heat source, and you're burning that trash. But in this case right here, I don't think that's the way it's working.
But we're not providing the flame. The equipment does not provide the flame.
Okay.
It provides airflow within that container.
Okay.
And so, just like if you were open burning or burning a pile out there.
With a blower.
With a blower,
Put the air.
but if you put it in a container, you set the debris, the wood on fire, and all we're doing is adding a fan, so that accelerates that process. I cannot imagine that is what the ordinance means by a class 3 incinerator. I think incinerator is Stericycle. That's what the incinerator is.
It's titled by, the permit is titled Air Quality Permit for Air Curtained Incinerator. How can an incinerator operate and not be incinerating? It has to incinerate its waste. That's why it's supposed to be 1,750 feet from the property line to residences. There's supposed to be a large separation so people aren't covered in ash and living in unhealthy conditions.
Or for what it's worth,
Incinerator.
seems relevant at this point to insert this into the conversation. The class 3 definition includes waste facilities. The only definition that occurs in the UDO is for a waste processing facility. There's an additional word in the middle of that definition. And while I'll admit that term is nowhere used in the UDO, it is not the same per the definition as a waste facility. So at least in theory, class 3 uses don't include incinerators.
But there is no definition for waste facility.
I just want to make sure the board's aware of that.
Thank you. There is no definition for waste facility in the UDO. We looked.
You're either accepting it and dumping it in a landfill or you're processing it. So that would be a waste facility.
We as a board are acutely aware that we've got a fair amount of work to do with words and definitions and getting the right words in the right order. We got it. We're already working on it. We know some more. And thank y'all for bringing this stuff up. So, I guess at the end of the day, if you want cream and butter, you got to stir that milk up. So, here we are. Does anybody else got anything on this board?
Yeah, I do. I just want to mention, just follow up again. I think Paul mentioned it, and I think it's a point worth making again. We can't really decide on a hypothetical. We're deciding on an LCID landfill permit. And so, actually, I think the idea of this process continuing for this applicant, there would be more scrutiny as to what goes on that site, with site visits, the necessary personnel to come out and verify that things are being done. So, but again, all we're looking at is a permit to operate the LCID landfill. And I think that needs to be the point that we make it on what we're going to decide here tonight. Yep.
Well, okay. Thank you.
Chair, is the floor open for motions?
It is.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion, please.
I'd love to hear it.
I make a motion that we approve the application as complete.
A second.
So we've got a motion to determine that this application is complete. A second?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I will have to abstain from this vote. This, I know it's a big, long, 75-page permit. But I don't care what kind of paper you have. Putting ash on other people's property is wrong. Something's wrong here. And I'm not satisfied with it at all. You don't do that. Now, I have dealt with the state before. I took water samples from my church. Made a simple mistake. They came down on me like a hammer. You don't want that. But something's wrong here. I will have to abstain. I've served on boards for 40 years. I've never had to abstain, but I will here tonight because I came out, something's wrong here.
Point of order, I'll have to dig further into the rules of this board. I wasn't anticipating this situation, but routinely with a board, there's an obligation to vote. Typically, there's a rule procedure that says that if you abstain from a vote without having an actual conflict that exists that would not allow you to vote on the issue, then your vote is counted in the affirmative. So I would just remind the board that if there's not an abstention based on a direct conflict of interest, then it counts as a vote in the affirmative.
I understand that.
Okay.
I do understand that completely. I did look into that. And I agree with it.
So I'll just make one point of clarification too. So it's not necessarily a motion to approve, it's a motion to recommend approval.
Correct.
At the
Recommend
next,
approval.
At the next step of the commissioners.
Exactly.
Okay, so was your intent to recommend that the commissioners approve this permit?
Absolutely, because the commissioner's final say-so is required. And so our approval is just a recommendation. So my original motion was to recommend approval.
Okay, well, I misunderstood. I thought you said that you was gonna make a motion that said the application was complete.
Approved and complete.
Okay.
And recommended.
All right, so for my, make sure I got my simple mind in the right gear. Now we've got a motion that says the application is complete and we're recommending the commissioners approve this permit. Did I say that right?
Yes, Chair, you
Okay.
did. Thank you.
And we still got a second?
Still saying.
Still got a second. Okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, raise your right hand. Okay, and we've got one abstention. Okay. Okay.
Chair, will you announce the vote again?
All right, all in favor, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we got 5, and opposed is 1. So we got 5 to 1 and an abstention.
So it'd be a 6 to 1.
Which makes
6 to 1.
Be a 6 to 1 for approval of recommend approval.
Thank you.
Now, as you're looking at the rules, does the member have to be in the room to vote?
Yes.
Okay. Be present. All right. Well, I got a phone call this afternoon with a vote on this motion. But if they're not here, whether it was for or against, it doesn't matter.
No, if they're not here to count as part of the quorum and then present for the vote, then that vote doesn't count.
Okay.
Nor do I think it's relevant under the circumstances.
Well, and there's that.
And Chair, just to verify, Henry's abstaining not from a conflict of interest, but just from a conflict of getting the information.
Conflict of conscience.
Okay, okay.
And that's his right.
Correct.
It is, but no, if it's a conflict of
There
interest.
cannot, you know, all the things may be in place. But my conscience, you don't put ash on other people's property.
No, I'm just clarifying to make sure there wasn't a conflict of interest.
I know something's wrong. It may not be in this paperwork, but something's wrong. But I had to do that because our responsibility, I'm glad you brought that up. Our responsibility is, and this is, it's hard to say, but it's in, everything's in place. The paperwork's there. It's a shame.
y'all wanna take 5 minutes and recess?
Sure.
Let's do that. We're gonna take a 5-minute recess. Back at 20 past. getting ready to reconvene. That's right.
I don't even follow that.
Well, once a week, they're picking up. More than once a week. Sometimes it's sometimes it's just a question. You know, it's probably picking up. I can't imagine it
Two and three left.
Yeah, 2 and 3.
Two shouldn't take very long at all.
Yeah, I read,
To make a decision.
I read two, that was 5:30. Well, it's just a proposal, right?
You go ahead. Yeah, no, we're getting ready to reconvene, so if y'all want.
We're reconvening our meeting.
Please take a seat or exit if you'd like to have a discussion. So we really need to get you the gas. Can we get on the gas? Please.
He's had 2 or 3.
No.
Order. We ask you to sit down and be quiet or exit, please.
Yeah. Sergeant at Arms.
Girls can say that.
Poor children.
That's Mama Bear.
Yeah, get out or.
My daughter said something about that. You can't get loud enough to get them quiet enough. You're a kindergarten teacher. Can't get loud.
We typically just do that little computer camera up there, but because of the, yeah, we're on the county commission level, maybe.
Hey, we're trying to get back together here.
All right, you ready?
Ready.
Number 2, new business, draft rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you might recall, at the tail end of our last meeting, we discussed the possibility of kicking our meeting time earlier. Obviously, we start at 7, and when we have rather important items on the agenda, we go till 9:30 or 10, or sometimes 11, or sometimes later. So if I recall correctly from that discussion, we talked about just simply moving up the time, but Mr. Jordan also talked about possibly vacillating the time based on standard time versus daylight saving time, right? So you have 2 options before you. Option 1 would simply be to move it from current time of 7 to 6. Option 2 would be a 5:30 start time for the months of January, February, March, November, and December, but a 6:30 time for all others. That's all I have officially presented. Anecdotally, I will say, I fear if we have a time that shifts one to the next, then we'll have citizens come 1 month at a 5:30 meeting, and then we switch it, and they get here an hour early, and they don't.
Citizens, we might have
They
board
didn't know,
members.
right. So I put that in as an option because it was discussed. But if I can make any kind of a staff recommendation, I would say pick a date, a time certain if you are going to change your time.
And Matthew, I thought the same thing. That's the one concern I have was the changing of the time for the community to be able to depend on a certain, what that time is.
Yeah.
Being on the other side of this issue and coming in and addressing boards, it's nice to have something to depend on, a certain time that you can count on.
Yeah.
Year round.
And again, just an amendment to your rules of procedure doesn't, you can control that yourselves. It doesn't need, county commission final approval or anything.
Mr. Director, I have one other thing I wanted to throw in.
Yeah.
In section 1.3, it says, while not required by statute, reasonable efforts will be made to post such changes on the county website. It is actually now required by statute to post those changes for this board. So we want to just amend that to say that we will post it on the website.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so it says, while not required by statute. I'm not sure when these were last amended. 2020. But it is actually a statutory requirement for us to post that change on the website.
For special meetings.
For special meetings, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Our meetings are pretty special. Our meetings are pretty special.
You've been here too long, right?
So should we just change that last sentence to say, notice shall be posted on the county website?
Yep.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about the landfill.
Hope not.
Okay.
Yeah, whenever they
Thank
meet.
y'all.
Okay. So does that mean we have two items to consider, the time change and an amendment to that final sentence of section 1.3? So it would read, notice shall be posted on the county website?
Well, I think that'd be something we could take some action on RAT right now. We're good about having done something with the consensus of everybody.
That's moving the meeting time to what?
No, putting in there that if we do anything.
Oh, just to post it
shall
online?
be posted
Shall
on
be
the
posted.
Yeah, just to
county
post it
website.
online, yeah.
For special
Yes.
The amendment to section 1.3 that says that we shall, yeah.
That's fine.
I think there's a consensus there.
Makes sense to me.
Make it a motion.
Second.
So we got a motion to change the words to it shall be posted. Need a second? Everybody understand what we're doing? This is just procedural
Just
thing.
changing the word. yeah.
Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? How about that now?
There you go.
Just
We can agree on
that
something.
quick.
And we're gonna move this meeting to 6 o'clock.
I'm kind of, we don't need to like move like 5:30, 6:30 off.
Yeah, we need to have if we're gonna move, we
Just
need to
have
have
a
6
consistent
or.
time all year.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Same time all year.
I would appreciate that. I'll get,
Yeah.
I'll get confused.
You'd probably appreciate 6 or 5:30 too.
That'd be good.
I would just leave the office and come here, yeah. I mean,
The time's gonna change, so 5 is gonna seem like 6 for half the year.
I haven't recovered from the time change last week.
Yeah.
So to bring everybody back up to speed with the conversation, the tenor of this specific was, when we start a meeting at 7 o'clock in the winter, it's been dark for 2 hours when we get here. The staff has been at work since 7 or 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. Then they've got to kill 2 hours worth of time between 5 and 7, which probably ain't a big deal, but it's gotta be done. And then you've got the meeting time and then getting home. Now that's a generic summation of how we got this, and the question was, do we wanna back the start time of this meeting up so that, one, they don't have that 2 hour window to kill between 5 and whenever we start, potentially, and us not being so late when we get through. Now, the flip side of that coin is, in the summertime, those board members who work outside need to take advantage of as much sunshine as they can. So there's where we are. Did I pretty much wrap that up?
I think that's a pretty good summary.
Okay.
So, you were out of the area or you were?
No, I work from home.
You were from
Tom works out the area.
Tom, but your area is not.
Yeah, it's not far away. I can do 6. I've been going in at 7 and getting off at 4, so 5:30 could work too. But
I would propose 6, just for the nature of if there is a citizen that wants to come talk and they don't get off till 5 or 5:15, and they live down the southern part of the county, or all the way up in the northern reaches of the county, they have time to get home, make some concessions, then get back.
So, yeah, to back that up as well, I've spoke to some folks who, I work outside, so the time is important to me, but they work till 5 o'clock out of town. Getting home, taking care of the family, getting documents and getting to this meeting, if it's at 6, then absolutely, if it's at 5:30 or at 6, could be a challenge to those folks. It literally could be a challenge. If you're 30 minutes out of town and you get home and try to take care of your family and get your documents together and get to the meeting. I understand and I appreciate keeping staff around for long hours, and to do anything we can do to prevent that, I'm all for it. However, we're here to serve the community.
Makes sense. So what if we are gonna make a change, what do we consider 6:30?
6:30.
Or do we keep it as is?
Make a motion to change to 6:30
I'll second that.
Now this is for the year.
for the year,
This-
all year
this is-
long.
You're right, 6:30.
So you just do it on one day a month, and it's more respectful to the county employees.
So, before we vote on it, now, are we talking about starting in April?
Sure.
Okay. So we've got a motion and a second to move the start time of this meeting to 6:30. Back it up 30 minutes from 7 to 6:30, starting next month. Is any discussion about that? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Man, twice just checking them off. Okay,
So that's number 2 then.
yeah.
What's number 3?
Road access and related amendments.
Okay. That's right.
If I wasn't the chairman, I'd say I move we have some road access and related amendments.
All right.
Vote on it right now.
Ready?
Do we wanna,
Yep.
okay.
Do you want to put?
I was gonna ask, do we wanna consider these now, or do we wanna wait till next month?
You had to guess, how much time do we need to spend on
We could debate this for quite a while.
I make a motion, we table this topic to the next meeting.
Second.
this? So, before we vote on that,
I have notes on mine to ask.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I do too.
They won't fade until before next month.
okay, so what we've been doing is talking about this stuff and then coming back the next month and having the confab. Do you want to talk a little bit and then we have confab?
Well, this
and
is
we'll
not
start
that.
it fresh?
This is not that. So if what we are not doing tonight, what's not on your agenda, is any new sections of the UDO for our staff review and discussion and draft and everything. That's not on your agenda at all, other than the second look that we did under old business.
Okay.
This item is a request from our county commissioners.
Well, absolutely table that then.
You got a motion in a second.
We got a motion and a second.
Motion still stands.
Oh, wait a minute. Is this information that is?
You're a quarter.
You're here.
There's only 2 county commissioners in the room.
We are so dedicated.
So I'll elaborate. I don't know if it's their most recent meeting or the one before that, but based on comments and interest in these industrial developments, the commissioners asked staff to look into changes to road access for these types of industrial developments. So we have drafted for you a few changes, both for the road access topic, but also certain items that have become part of the debate as we've gone through this, mostly in November and January. So the definition of direct access, what exactly constitutes construction activities. We grabbed the low-hanging fruit to change the waiver section to a variance section. So it's mostly an amendment to road access based on the request from the county commissioners, but there's a little bit of other housekeeping in there as well. If you were to approve this tonight, you'd be making a motion or a vote to recommend approval. It would have to go before a public hearing before the county commissioners and then be adopted as a UDO amendment after that whole process.
So is the intent to pull this, what we have been doing all this time was looking at changes to the whole thing and
This
doing
is
it
a-
one time? So is this a pull-out that we want to look at
For
separately?
lack of a better term, this is an interruption to that process, yes.
Priority item.
Yeah.
Okay.
When the elected officials ask you to do something, you do it, right? So.
Yeah.
Well, since we can't get a vote on tabling it, we're about gonna have
I
to.
can't get that.
All right.
I can't get no cooperation.
Well, that puts a different light on it, doesn't it?
Okay. So we can either vote on tabling this, or we could rescind that motion and talk about this.
So I will say too, you know, state law and general procedure doesn't require you to take action tonight. You have been requested by the county commissioners to consider this. You could hypothetically, unless we get strong pushback, I would imagine, debate it, think about some of these things, take it to the April meeting, which will have at least 30 more minutes to debate these types of items, right?
We just do it
I think
30
that's
minutes
in the realm of possibilities.
Absolutely, yep.
If y'all get this the end of April, 1st of May, is that good enough? Do you need it sooner than that?
No, we are here to serve you.
Well, and we're here to help y'all, so do we need to do it right now, or if we do something at the next?
You're probably gonna have Philip.
Well, let me modify my motion then.
Okay.
So I'll modify the motion to say, let's hear the presentation from Matthew, but table any action for further debate and decision to the next meeting. That way we can at least hear what he has to say. We have the proposed changes or information in this right here, and we can take that combined with what he presents tonight and have next month to think about it and bring any additional thoughts, and at that point take any action.
Can I make a suggestion?
I need to shorten that motion.
No, my suggestion is that you not take any action on the motion that's been made, or just leave it as is, because if you make your motion in that way, then you're binding yourselves to not take action after the presentation is made. So if after he's done speaking, you decide, you know what, this is clear, and we could do something tonight, you've already bound yourself not to do that. So I would just suggest.
Yeah, I made it conditional. I need to get the motion.
So let me weigh in on this. If you will rescind your motion, that right there will just.
I'll rescind it.
There you go.
Okay,
I
now.
think that works.
Sorry to overcomplicate.
No
I am
problem.
an engineer, so that.
Let me ask something too as well.
What time is it? Now we know how to build a watch.
So Matt, you have some information for us too as well that's pretty extensive and pretty deep information regarding classifications of highways and et cetera. I don't want to get too deep into this until we actually talk about it.
Yeah.
But the point is, I think this is going to take a little time to evaluate and make the best decision moving forward. Is that fair to say?
So is your question, do I have extensive information for you? I don't know that I would say necessarily extensive. So the notes that I have in the presentation I was going to give talks about draft amendments to 5 different sections.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, 4 specific sections of Article 6.5, and then 2 kind of corresponding definitions as well. That would be construction activities and direct
I
access.
think we can move forward, if I'm not mistaken, so.
Let's say if we're gonna do it, let's do it.
Okay.
Move on. Speak for you, Mr.
Are you able to pull up the function class map?
When you do that, take a look at me. All I got to do is say, you heard me.
Get my glasses back on.
What I'm handing to you now is really kind of a screenshot of more or less the lower 2/3 of Alamance County. The clustered color coding you see in the kind of the top center is Burlington, Graham, various municipalities. And on down to the south is obviously the southern end of the county. Those are, that is a printout of the North Carolina DOT's function classification map. And those classifications of roads will come in handy as we get into this. So I'm going to go through this just in summary style as I have been the other UDO amendments, and then we'll be happy to take any questions you have at the end. This was drafted as well by my excellent colleague here to the right, so he may have some answers for you as well. All right, so first proposed change is section 6.5.3D, currently titled Land Spacing Waiver. So in this section, we did away with waiver process altogether. There's really nowhere in state law that grants local governments the authority to grant a waiver. The term of art, the common legal procedure and term is a variance. So this change would simply rectify that and require that any granted variance. So first off, the waiver would, or the variance would have to go through the Board of Adjustment, the regular process. Then we added some language that if there was a variance granted, that would have to appear on the official plans as part of the intent to construct application process. 6.5.3F traffic impact analysis. The change here aims to better clarify what direct access is and what type of roads are excluded from eligibility based on the NCDOT functional classification. This also clarifies that direct access cannot be established on paper only, but actual access must take place from, I'm sorry, I must have this typed out. It cannot take place from a secondary entry point that is not eligible. That's kind of, Mr. Creamery, about your question that you asked earlier, how we tried to make that distinction there. So the plans have to show direct access, and then the actual commercial operations after the fact have to be from that direct access. 6.5.4B would now connect to an amended definition of construction activities. I'll get to that in a couple of points. And it would change the following for public hearing notices. It would omit the reference to North Carolina General Statute 406B, which again deals with quasi-judicial procedures. What we had tonight is not a quasi-judicial procedure. So our ordinance currently references a different type of procedure for what we have here. And instead, it aligns everything toward the applicant and the notice timelines to be consistent between 10 and 25 days prior to the hearing. So we would no longer have one section that says 10 to 25 days and then another that says no more than 21 days, and that kind of conflicting guidance. And then further down in the subsection titled Approval of Intent to Construct Permits, this change gives a defined time limit of 45 days for planning board to review and make a recommendation on the permit. If they do not, then the county commissioners may act on the application. And it also clarifies that the planning board decisions are not binding. So correct me if I'm wrong, the planning board could recommend denial, but then it would still go to the commissioners, and the commissioners could recommend approval or vice versa.
We've clarified that process because right now it doesn't anticipate a process for anything other than an approval.
That's what it looks like to me.
Right.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you please.
I was just gonna say, so the last item is actually gonna be, they would actually be definitional changes in Article 7, just to kind of correspond to the previous sections. And that would be the change to the definition of construction activities and the new definition of direct access. And again, I know we talked about this a little bit in the last meeting. So the current definition of construction activities is obviously very vague. It basically says you can't do anything at all prior to getting your permit, including surveying the property. The new definition would seek to kind of make a distinction between early on in the process, committing surveys and doing certain small scale work to prepare for the application versus the actual operation of the business, right? Or constructing buildings in pursuit of operating the business. It seeks to make that distinction in the construction activities. And in consultation with environmental health when he's left. We, after that last meeting, we emailed back and forth, and again, we took out that language about clearing, grubbing, and grading, if you remember that as part of the previous discussion. So those are the changes in totality. There's a lot more we could look at, obviously, right? Earlier we got into how the definitions of the classification of uses don't line up and they're not clear in the appendix. There's other things, there's always things that we can clarify. But that's based off the commissioner's request and kind of the low-hanging fruit and some of the gray area items that we've worked through the past few months. Do you have anything to add, Rick?
No, I want to hear from Mr. Chandler. I think he's got something to say. He's holding it back.
Well, I'm just going back to page 9. It's section, it's page 9.
Okay, I'm gonna slow.
I'm with you, sir. Yeah.
Okay, number 2, you got number 2, the last of that paragraph, it reads, the Board of Commissioners determines that the application is compliant with the requirements of this ordinance, it shall issue the intent to construct a permit. If the Board of Commissioners determines that the application is not compliant with the requirements of this ordinance, it shall deny the application. So the decision of the Board of Commissioners may be appealed, blah, blah, blah. So in this particular case, I just want to get clarification on this. So if the Board of Commissioners reviews the applications being compliant, they don't even have a choice. Is that what I'm here? Is that what I'm reading here? They don't have a choice not to approve it. Is that right, Rick?
That's correct, yes.
Wow.
And let me say,
Wow.
because you're newer on this
I'm
board,
very new.
but
It's obvious to most people.
I have asked a question in several different settings. Can we say no? And the answer is no. You check off all the boxes. The answer is yes.
That's right. I mean, well, obviously you can say whatever you want to say, but there's not discretion built into the process for mixed opinions about whether or not something should be in a certain place or anything like that, right?
And all of this comes back to the absence of zoning.
Correct.
I'll add, you could make this a quasi-judicial procedure where you do take evidence and facts without it having to have zoning. You could make, I mean, there are telecommunication tower ordinances in unzoned counties that require a special permit and a quasi-judicial decision, but as this is written now, and Rick, I don't mean to, I'm not jumping the train, but the way it's written now, this is kind of more of a ministerial act. If you meet the requirement, you get your permit. Technically, even in a quasi-judicial decision, you check all your boxes and nobody can say otherwise, can prove otherwise, you get your permit. But there's a little more opportunity for the opposing party to present evidence, no, you're not meeting, like they were trying to tonight.
Right. I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunity for people to present their opinions about what should happen, but I guess the underlying reality is that opinion about whether or not something should exist in a certain place is not relevant to the decision here. If you meet the objective qualifying factors, then the permit shall issue. There's not discretion as to whether or not things should be in a certain place, and that's the hallmark of zoning, right? Is to say that we want certain things in certain areas in order to keep things flowing smoothly, and we don't have that same level of structure here.
Right. That's where you put the discretion in the process.
Well, when you're, so if it's a traditional rezoning or a conditional rezoning, typically these things come in the form of a rezoning. The property is what it is, and in order to engage in the development we want to, we've got to petition for rezoning or even a conditional rezoning. Then ultimately, the governing board has to ask themselves, the planning board reviews and make a recommendation, just like you do now with any text amendment. But ultimately, the governing board has to ask themselves, is this in keeping with our preordained plans that we've set forth for our jurisdiction? And that's where your comprehensive plan or land development plan comes in place. The comprehensive plan is supposed to be a broad, well thought out, carefully studied document that says, we want this type of economic development here and this type of development there, and you kind of map it all out beforehand. Then when you receive those development requests, you can filter it through that process and say, does this match up with our preordained plans?
Yeah.
So it's discretionary in that sense, right? That you can say, yes, we have identified this as a future commercial corridor.
Right, and that's
so
what I'm
the
saying,
rezoning
like, when
makes
you
sense.
lay out those master plans,
So
lay
it's-
out
it-
the
yeah.
language in the zoning, like, and you go through that process, that's the time to interject your discretion or
Exactly.
preferences, bias, or opinions.
Right.
Right.
After that language is in place, if somebody comes along after that's established and checks those boxes, they have the development by right to do what they want with their property.
That's right. Yep. This might be a good place for me to interject a short message about where we are in terms of state law. Late in 2024, the state legislature passed the Disaster Recovery Act of 2024, mostly to deal with Helene issues, but a lot of other things as well. Included in that was a prohibition on local governments downzoning property without the consent of all the people that would be downzoned from certain types of uses if that were to happen.
And downzoning, just quick, is limiting the number of uses or decreasing density on a property.
What it is currently.
Generally.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so saying you can do less with it than you currently can, and that's.
Without their consent.
Right, and so it talks about zoning, it talks about other development ordinances that can't do that. There's two schools of thought, that has not been rescinded, by the way, by the legislature. There was a lot of thought that may happen at some point in 2025, they might decide, you know what, we went too far, we took too much authority away from local governments. It was related to a small local issue in a neighboring county, and then things kind of went too far. That has not been repealed, that's still in place. No one, to my knowledge, has really tested the limits of that restriction, but we're starting to see people push back on downzoning in other local governments nearby. Part of the thought is that it really was designed to impact places that already have zoning, not like Alamance County. One theory on what that means for us is that if we were to enact some sort of sweeping regulatory change that were to affect all of unincorporated Alamance County, then we get our one bite at the apple, but then beyond that we'd be more limited in terms of what we could do. A different theory is that we don't have even that authority to make that sweeping change, and we just don't really know how a court might look at that at this point. But what I will say is if we do go with the theory that we have one bite at the apple, then we have that one bite. And if we make a change that affects all of unincorporated Alamance County, even as to things like what we've just described here, that might be the only opportunity we have to make that type of down zoning as to unincorporated properties, unless we get permission from people to downzone them individually. So I just want to make sure you're aware of the fact that this is a proposal, but it's also one that could potentially have a lot of weight and a lot of impact on the future if the state law doesn't change. I think there are people that think that we might try to seek an exemption for Alamance County. We know at least one local government in the state has gotten an exemption from that state law, but as it stands right now, we're not exempt. And we're also in uncharted waters because we don't have zoning. I think they passed that law thinking most people have already got zoning and they've done what they intend to do. We're not in that place.
So it involves only in places where unincorporated areas that have zoning, and we don't have that at this point. So
It applies to all local governments.
Do what?
Right.
It applies to all local governments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that one theory is that because we don't have a formal zoning map and a zoning ordinance that impacts the entirety of the unincorporated areas of Alamance County, then we would get one shot at it. A different theory is that we've come close enough to regulating land use through our current UDO that we would probably be in the same place as everyone else, and we're not probably going to know exactly how that's going to shake out until someone tests it and we end up in front of a court arguing that.
So by the nature that we have a UDO or some sort of language speaking to the regulated use of land, if we were to implement a zoning ordinance throughout the county, that act in and of itself would be violating that statute.
That's very possible.
That'd be a sweeping down zoning, right?
Right.
Otherwise, your zoning would kind of have to match verbatim, location based with what's in the ordinance, because that could be a theory somebody could use in court to say, well, just by the nature of you creating or establishing a zoning plan, you're further restricting the use of the property than what's currently governing the UDO.
That's very possible, and in full candor, there are places in our UDO where we don't cite to zoning authority specifically, but we insert language that is wholesale from the zoning statute. I mean, it is word for word from the zoning statute, and we regulate land use in a way that is only possible by using zoning authority, even though we don't cite to zoning authority.
Basically, everything in here points back to a state statute.
Yes. Even if we don't cite it like we probably should have, we've lifted the language and then we've done something that's only possible to do based on zoning authority.
All right. That's above. Yeah.
So
It's a lawyer
it's
battle
the
right
grayest,
there.
it's the grayest of gray areas.
That's what I'm saying. That argument could be made,
Okay.
and yeah.
So is there a way to determine that prior to starting the exercise of doing a zoning plan, or do you just do one and then like, well, let's see what happens? You know what I mean? Like, how do you anticipate what that ruling would be?
It's hard to anticipate.
Yeah.
And it would potentially impact anybody who's impacted, right?
Yeah.
So anybody who stands to lose the ability to use their land in some meaningful way could decide they want to test that theory, yes.
And has the funds.
Right, of course, yeah. So I'm saying all that because we're not entirely sure where things stand, and because this decision, when and if it's made at this board level, has a lot of impact, and I want you to know that.
I think you broke.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
No, you did fine. You did very well. Thank you. I'm gonna look into that.
Sure.
I just have a question. When you're talking all these big words, what if where we are right now, seems like we're just in a kind of a haze on that gray area. What if I buy a bunch of land down there near the rock quarry and I'm gonna make myself an asphalt company? Can I do that right now?
You have to go through this
Cross all the I's,
process.
T's and dot all the I's.
But if I check every box, doesn't the state kind of say it's okay?
Well, there's state permits involved as well.
Right, if I do all of that.
Right.
So Alamance County, we don't have that much power when it comes to stuff like that, do we?
And I think before we decide to say that we haven't done something intentionally, I think we have done something intentionally. We have remained free from that encumbrance on purpose in order to, I believe, based on what I've seen, to encourage industrial development, to encourage people to exercise the right to use their property as they see fit. And there's people that feel strongly about that. So I don't think it's necessarily a mistake that we're there, but we do encounter situations like this that we don't have as much recourse as people think we might in this circumstance.
So I remember one of my first meetings, and we had a large audience out here off the project off 119, that was the slaughterhouse, right? I don't remember what they
Proposed. Goat slaughterhouse or something? Isn't that goat processing?
goat processing or.
Is that what it was?
That was
It was
before my
something-
time.
Wow.
Yes,
I've heard
And they all
Okay.
came here to
Was this the
speak
same
about.
time as the Euless landfill, the Euless Road landfill? Because I think I was there too.
So, but they all came here to speak about that, but it was not something that we had any, we didn't have any ability to do any, we didn't have any control. Because it was in an area that they could just put this thing there.
That's my fear.
That was that, but they had to go through the state processes to get permits and such forth. I don't even know if they ever did that, I don't.
I don't think they officially ever started that process, other than just to think out loud.
Well, wasn't there gonna be some kind of Ferris wheel down there in Saxby Hall?
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
Well, there was that.
Okay,
The Whirligig Park,
okay.
if I remember right. And, you know, this is one of them, really didn't think it all the way through, but he got a news camera out there and said, I'm kind of, in my mind, toying with the idea of, I don't know how many hours I stood down at Thomas Ray's explaining to people that this probably not gonna happen. Because if you're gonna bring that many people in there, it's gonna have to be a bathroom somewhere. And if you've been in this community long, you know that dog not gonna hunt. You're just about gonna have to load it on a truck and haul it away. And that's gonna be cost prohibitive. We managed to keep them fires stomped out. Of course, it never, you think, I know. But you don't know. It's not a problem until it is.
And I've thought about that a lot.
And many, many years ago, when you and I were little, old folks in the community, I'm not gonna have somebody tell me what I can and can't, but I got to pay the tax, and I'm gonna do what I wanna do. There was a time when that logic worked. But now, you got your little island, and this is what it's gonna be. And money comes in here from somewhere else, and they buy here, buy here, buy here, and the next thing you know, you
You've got a goat
are
process.
Alamance County on a North Carolina state map. You're that little white dot right there and amongst all the other.
Bullseye.
Yeah. And they build strip malls and housing developments, and apartment complexes, and elementary school, and the hospital, and you just name it up. And there you are right in the middle of it. And where you used to say, I think I'll save a few gallons of water and just walk out in the backyard and come back in the house. You can't do that now. Because anywhere you go, there's 1,000 eyes looking right at you. And you got your rights. I'm not gonna have somebody tell me what I can do and can't do. But by default, you don't have any rights. Because now This is a perspective. But we ain't gonna have no zoning. Y'all gonna tell me what I can do. I'm giving up my rights.
So based off, kind of piggybacking off that, if we do have one shot at this, or if it's better to kind of fold it all into one bigger process. I don't know how our commissioners might feel about it.
Yeah,
But we could fold these into our larger UDO amendment process since we've been going through piece by piece.
Well, my one concern, was when I found out that DOT checked with the county, and there were no prohibitions on that road, on that specific road, on what could and couldn't enter it. And so they issued the permit. And when they issued that permit, it's grandfathered, they can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So, part of what's put us where we are right now. I have no idea what might be coming down the pike. But somebody else goes out and gets a permit. But I understand what Rick is saying too. I mean, if this is, if we've only got one shot, this may be the wrong place to fire it. I don't know. Is that what you're saying, Rick?
I'm saying that's
a possibility.
I'm saying that's the best case scenario.
You're not gonna
is that
hurt
we
my
have-
feelings when you tell me what you think, buddy. You
The
know
best
that.
case, I appreciate that. I think the best case scenario is we have one shot.
Right.
So my strong advice is if we have one shot, let's make it as meaningful as possible.
Yeah, the definition, the new law change, and exactly what it says verbatim on downzoning. No amendment to a zoning regulation or a zoning map that downzones property shall be initiated, enacted, or enforced without the written consent of all property owners whose property is the subject of the downzoning amendment.
That's initiated. So like I said, just by the nature of
Right.
establishing a zoning ordinance,
So,
you're kind of walking that line.
like you said, one school of thought is we don't have currently official zoning, so the adoption of it would be okay because we're adopting it, we're not amending it, right? Based on that reading, it's a little bit different. I mean, it's just.
And that's the opinion we got from the legislative
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
And this transaction right here is not zoning, but it's road regulation, right?
Right.
Because it's the same legislator that hadn't passed the budget.
Rockingham County's gonna help us out on that.
They're all in that camp right now.
That's not very true.
Well, if you do get to the point, or if we get to the point of writing or establishing a zoning document, that language needs to be something that is for Alamance County, not a copy and paste from other county next door or down, miles and miles away.
Right.
You
Well,
need
and
to
that's
make
what-
sure
that's what we
that-
spent 8 months on,
You
right?
need to be sure whatever consultant, professional consultant, land planner, landscape architect, land developer, whatever professional is aiding to write that language understands that.
The one thing I remember about all that, because I was just coming in this, was you could not have a gazebo over 7 foot tall. It really matters, don't it? That's what I remember, they were 7 foot tall gazebo. I don't
Because
have
that is
one.
very commonplace for that copy and paste to happen on those lengthy documents.
Well,
Because they do get
this
hundreds and
board
hundreds of pages.
took a year last year
Yeah.
drafting that ordinance so that we would be doing it ourselves. We wouldn't be hiring a consultant.
Okay.
I mean, I think we have that.
Yeah.
We just haven't decided that's what we want to do.
Gotcha.
And looking at this from the standpoint of, this would severely restrict the use of this heavy industry.
The availability of roads is so.
Severely
So
restrict.
so
I'm
if
looking
you look at
this
that.
here, and it would severely restrict.
Based on that classification, so the language in the draft of the ordinance change is local roads, minor collectors, and major collectors.
That only leaves two.
Those are the
highway
bottom,
and then
yeah, those are the bottom three
Prince Harry
of
Arterial.
7
And
classifications.
that's other highways.
And that's almost the entire
So
county.
we're only talking about
Yeah,
the interstate or highway.
mostly the state highways in the southern part of the county and then 87 in the northern part of the county.
You can make an argument that
If you
there's-
restrict those three
Yeah,
road
you can make an
types.
argument that how much land is actually exists in on those roads that would allow
Yeah.
a development to occur with our restrictions.
Yeah.
We could actually be putting something together that could prohibit, which is against pretty severe violation with the law to prohibit a use, once it's already allowed in the development ordinance. Because I'm looking at this and thinking, this is everything. We've got interstate and we've got highways is the only areas that's pretty severe restriction.
Well, and just for the sake of conversation, let's not lose sight of the fact that we don't access the interstate.
No. So you eliminate
got
that.
to intentionally get off the interstate and go to something.
There you go.
And get back on there. So there are no driveways that go to the interstate.
Main Street USA.
Probably a reason for
Not
that.
our section of it, no.
Well, have we gone through all the presentation or stuff that you wanted to cover?
Yeah, I've said all I, I've said
I
all I
don't
need
want
to
to be that
say.
guy, but I'm just wondering, do we want to entertain a motion?
I've said all I need to say.
And I mean, like you said, we could talk about this for a really long time, and that's fine. I don't want to cut anybody off or cut anybody short.
Well, do we need to have some guidance on what we're going to do with it? Are we gonna fold this, or do y'all wanna maybe take action on this next meeting? Do you wanna fold it into the larger process of UDO amendments? Do you wanna?
Well, most of this conversation is directed to the road portion. The construction activities is a whole different little,
Yeah.
what a direct access is, other than the road portion.
Right.
What is the difference in a major collector and other principal arterial?
So other principal arterial is 2 notches up from a major collector.
Now, what's that mean, notch?
So there's
You know,
7.
clicks.
Do you have the map? Can you put the map on the board?
So
So
what's
there's
the-
7 classifications of NCD of the 2 roads, starting with the highest and kind of highest use, high speed, most intense, you've got interstate. Then other principal arterial, then minor arterial, then,
We've got some major.
I'm sorry,
collectors
other
running
freeway. Other freeway is under interstates. Principal arterial, minor arterial, major collector, minor collector, and then local
So,
are the 7 classifications. of
the
NCD.
orange one going across the bottom, is that Snow Camp Road?
No, it's Greensboro Chapel Hill Road.
That's Snow Camp.
So,
No, it's not.
Well, yeah,
From a
1,005.
DOT
yeah, yeah.
standpoint.
So the state classifies roads like Greensboro Chapel Hill Road is a major,
how did they
That's
get
a
that
major.
classification though?
do it?
How did they make that classification? What is
They're-
the
Based on
they're
the right-of-way
thousands.
width, the travel lane width, so if it has a median, or, What do you mean?
I mean, like, how the road is constructed?
Yeah, that's got something to do with it too.
You mean like the vertical profile of it?
Yes,
Yeah,
for-
yeah.
Oh, the grades, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
But
I'm,
you,
no, I'm talking about the detail, the section through it. The
How thick the
subgrade.
pavement is?
Or
how
you
thick
got
the
4
pavement
inches of
is,
Oh,
stone,
yeah.
the guys-
3
well, that
inches
too,
of
that's
two
based on
inches
how much
asphalt.
traffic they anticipate to go through the area as
Okay, so
well.
there's a level that they build,
Yeah, they base this, usually dimensional constraints or how much traffic they
Okay.
anticipate for it to have in speed. You know, sometimes if the speeds are slower, they'll allow obstructions or mailboxes or whatever to be closer to the road. If it's a higher speed, those things need to be further off the road. Or if it has a ditch section or storm drainage, catch basins, that sort of thing, curb and gutter. Or if it's just shoulders and ditches.
so Patriot Place in Southern Alamance is gonna be constructed differently than Highway 87 based
Oh,
on the
absolutely.
usage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Southern High School Road's gonna be constructed different than
Different.
87.
And it's gonna be
but,
between Patriot, okay.
There you go, because Patriot Place is not a connected road, is it?
No,
Isn't
no,
it a
it
dead
is,
end?
it is.
Okay, all right, well, that's right there.
That's the only one I can think of.
I just kind of think maybe the line in the sand is the roads,
Local roads,
local roads.
the lowest category. Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, I think you made the motion at the meeting, but this comes from the citizen concern about Platte Mill Road, about the traffic on Platte Mill Road, which on the map is a local road.
It's a local road, yeah.
I mean, that's what got us here in the first place.
Is it only local because of the business, so to speak, on it? If that wasn't there, it'd just be like my little Trail 6,
The width
you
of the,
know?
it includes things like the width of the road, how much, what weight of traffic it will bear.
Yeah.
Speed limit.
Tolerate, things like that.
Stephen can probably elaborate on this, but based on looking at the maps and interactions with DOT, local roads to me are neighborhood roads, you know, roads with relatively low speed limit that kind of cut between two higher speed roads. And
Does 119 vary because it goes in front of the school, then it's there at Mebane, it's got all kind of stuff?
it does vary.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the specific cutoff point, but if you look at the map, it's color coded differently based on the location.
Doesn't the DOT use those classifications of the roads in their repair and maintenance schedules?
Probably.
So a local road doesn't get topped every whatever years, it gets longer.
That's a great question that I would not have the answer to.
Yeah. And we have a road similar to this in Haw River that gets a whole lot of traffic. And if you come off the highway in Haw River and you're going out 49 before the bridge, before it hits 70, you know that you need to ride to the right or you need to ride to the left, or you're going to be going blah, 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 because of the construction of the road doesn't allow for the loaded trucks and travel. And they repair it every year or two. And it doesn't help because they don't take it all out. They just coat it.
That's right.
Yeah.
We call that Band-Aid.
Hmm?
It's called a Band-Aid.
Yeah, they put a Band-Aid on it.
Never got enough time or money to do it right, but we always got enough time and money to do it over.
Yeah.
And over.
And over.
And over.
We're getting ready to have a prayer meeting.
Yeah.
Y'all ready?
Okay.
So our question to y'all, do you want to have two separate public hearings, one on roads and another one on the entire UDO package? Or do you just want us to put all this together, you have one public hearing and roll it all in there together? And I'm gonna get him involved in a time, because if we vote on this next month, you feasibly could address part of this before your budget's done. But in all likelihood, right after budget, you're gonna get the whole package.
I just don't want this to get lost in the growth of big pile of stuff, because when you're seeing things like Flat Mill Road, this is a real red flag for it to be another Flat Mill Road somewhere else.
That's right.
And I just think, I don't want neighbors, I wasn't about Meridian just because of all the traffic that was gonna be in there. Wonderful people, that wasn't an issue. And we're seeing, well, Southeast High School, we had to have so many car accidents before I had to give Amy Gaylor my kidney to get a stop sign. And thank God for her. But I mean, it's always like that. You put them all in the middle of the field, and new bus drivers and student drivers and everybody trying to figure out the lay of the land. I just don't want a dead kid or a dead mom. So it's just that important. I just don't want this to get lost.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like, you know, with the road improvements or whatever, I mean, even with just this application, DOT has already made commitments to improve Cloud Mill Road. And those improvements usually don't come without the development. Usually the development comes first to trigger that need or trigger that desire. And sometimes the developer pays for the improvements, or it's just so much traffic and unfortunate wrecks and events until something is done. And that's, I mean, there's a prime location, Union Ridge Road, and Jeffrey Strauss Road out where I live. I mean, that was a notorious spot there at that intersection due to sight distance there by the graveyards. It took way too long for a stop sign to be put there. Ultimately it was. But now there's one at McCray Road in 62, and I wonder why did they put one there?
Well,
You know?
we had a dead person at Eli Whitney before we got
Yeah.
the stoplight. So, you know,
So it's
I don't
unfortunate
want
those
A
things
dead
have to
person.
happen. But that's just
How
how
about
it
six?
works.
Like you gave, there's gonna be a kid get hit in front of the cruise through in Elon because they're running the stop sign of the school bus every day in the county school bus.
I just don't sacrifice.
Now we're getting
people.
off topic.
So are we thinking we're gonna work on this next meeting?
If you had to guess, can we get our work done and be ready to make them a presentation in July?
I think July is reasonable. If you remember from my presentation, was that the last meeting?
Maybe.
Yes, it was.
We already talked about circling back through
Right.
to touch on 6.5 because of the issues that have come up in this review process. So
Yep.
we're already planning on addressing 6.5.
Yep.
And we'll have to do the subdivision ordinance again because that got pulled up into the zoning proposal previously. So, yes, if we start at 6:30, we have a little extra time. We got a little extra time, right? And we.
So
I don't think
are
that
y'all
was the
good with
intention.
getting this from us officially as a complete package in July?
The whole thing? I
Yeah.
thought we just said not to put, I don't want it lost. You can
Okay.
show me that first.
Well, and we've intentionally been doing this.
Look at us make decisions like we all want.
We've been,
Like we've got a vote here.
Let's go ahead and vote.
we
Put
have-
it right here.
We've intentionally been keeping this in draft status, because
Okay. I see a
anytime,
little paper.
if we change one word in this ordinance, it has to go to you for a public hearing. So rather than make you go through 17 or 20 different public hearings, we're doing one.
Yeah.
With
We're,
all-
we're your friends.
all the
You may
changes.
not believe it.
As Pam said, we just don't want this to fall through the cracks. I don't know what's gonna happen between now and July, where none of us do.
Well, it may not matter.
We can
Jesus
have a
may
briefing.
come and solve all the
Not be able
problems.
to do anything about it.
Well, I just know we've watched, this is extremely emotional, went through school zoning, when I was on the school board. It is just, it's at your heart because it involves your children. This involves their neighborhoods and I just don't want another neighborhood to have to experience this. And it might, but I just think we just need to be better at figuring out, and that's why I'm on it with zoning. I've said that the whole time, that it has to be for Alamance County. It can't be something that was in Rockingham and we copy and paste it and put it here. Because we're not them, we're us.
Right.
So I just, I always think about the citizens, and they come out of their driveway and they shouldn't have to look 15 times before they know over by something.
And still get hit.
Yeah.
Right.
So July is what, 3 months from now?
Generically.
So if that's for everything, if we just do the one item, how long will that, what would that timeline be before it could go to the commissioners?
So for them to have time to do all that, would they need it, us to finish in May or us to finish in June?
So you're required to publicly notice a hearing twice, and start that process between 10 and 25 days prior to that hearing. So if you pass something in June, it could be on their agenda in July. It might not be the first meeting in July, but could get on there by July.
Well, unlike some bodies of government, we have to pass our budget the last day of June, so that'll be out of the way, unlike some people.
So our question is, do you want a public hearing on one item out of this between now and budget time? Or do you want to get through the budget and then do it all at one time? That's.
We just vote. People work here to do all the work. We just show up. I would like for Alamance County to hear this. So if they've got concerns about their own neighborhood, I think they need to hear this.
So you would like them to hear it separately?
If that's okay with y'all, but I'm just one
That's
little
what it sounds like.
20%.
It sounds like.
I don't think having a public hearing on this is gonna be a big disruption to our budget process.
Okay.
So do we want to vote?
We have public hearings
It's
all
all
the
right
time
with
for
me.
things I don't even see coming, so.
I just think as much as this.
Go ahead and look at me, I'll say, you heard me.
I think if I'm reading the conversation correctly, we would only do classification of
So you
local
good
roads,
with what
we
you
wouldn't add
got
in the major and
tonight?
minor collectors.
Maybe just look at the, what do we call them,
As
local
far as
roads?
Local roads.
As far as the
I
road.
think that
not the
really
collectors.
touches neighborhoods.
This is the first time I've seen
One of the
this.
things we don't wanna
I
do
asked for it,
too.
but it's the first time I've seen this map.
Okay.
And I
One
know
of the things I
Steve
think
brought
we
up the
don't
fact
wanna-
that, maybe we could back it back down and look at local
Right. That's what I was
versus a
saying.
major and a minor collector. I think that's reasonable. It wouldn't be as restrictive that way. We're putting a couple more type of roads in there that could
Right.
possibly house this type of use.
My first concern, and I think the rest of our first concern was the local roads.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was looking
The other side
at
of
this.
this issue is, we can't hamstring industrial growth in Alamance County, because if we just grow houses, we're gonna see a tax rate go through the roof.
But the thing is too, that you have to consider too, is the major and minor collectors does have a lot of residential development on
I
them.
know.
Well, Mevin just voted for another 17,000 home site. I mean, up.
17,000?
17 million.
80-something, almost 100. They just are inventing land. They're dropping in by helicopter.
So you could incorporate something that
Scary.
a residential neighborhood could still be impacted by,
Yeah.
even with a major and minor collector, because there's a lot of residential development on those two roads.
Well, where Buc-ee's is and now Target and all that out
Buc-ee's is
there.
rich enough to make their own road.
So is that language in the packet you gave us?
Yeah, under the traffic impact analysis section.
Because
What's
right
the page
now,
number in
it's
the
very
bottom corner?
restrictive in the
4.
sense that it's major, minor, and local that
So-
this can't exist on. So that only leaves 40 as Rodney says, which is not part of the equation, and your other highways.
I don't want to beat a dead horse at 10:30 at night, but I will just briefly remind the board that if we decide to do this related to the road type change for commercial activity, that is likely our one shot. That's, I mean, if we do that and we effectively say to the entire unincorporated county, you can no longer do whatever unless you're in this place, that's our shot. And if that's the shot we want to take, then that's fine, but I just want to remind the board that that's the proposal that you'd be working on and putting forward as being the only type of land use restriction we would have. So, again, I'm not trying to throw cold water on it, but just remember that.
That's where I went when you made that, when you discussed that issue with us before. That's a big issue.
Do you want to talk about what we just talked about a second ago?
What's that?
The crazy idea that we just talked about?
Oh, zoning the entire county residential, and then if somebody wants to come with an application, they have to petition for a commercial rezoning?
I think that public hearing might get discussion.
Yeah.
Well, that throws you power right for some.
That's
for
not
properties
crazy.
out
Some
there.
places have done that in the past.
Yeah.
The entire jurisdiction is zoned residential.
Yeah.
They're usually small.
So all your business, industrial that fall would be non-conforming at that point?
Correct.
Wow.
They'd have to apply for a variance.
Yeah.
Now, farms wouldn't be impacted, obviously.
Yeah,
But-
they can't make any decision that affects agricultural property.
Mhm.
Right.
Or you could write the non-conforming standards to be very lenient.
Yeah.
Giving them more
Not
time if they shut
restricted,
down.
yeah.
I'm going
Are you ready for that public hearing?
I am going, I'm gonna be in the witness protection program. I am not going to be part of that.
I'll watch it online.
Yeah.
That public
In a
hearing.
safe room.
And you'd have to be down there.
We'll
In the
zoom in.
middle of a lot of
Zoom up space.
That's why we get paid the big bucks.
I brought, yes, y'all can all come to my beach house next year, if not, so.
Yeah, because that's shutting down for 6 months and then not being able to open back up.
So do we want more information and investigation on
I
this?
think we
The
need
news
to
is
study
fixing
it a little
to
more.
Yeah.
Let's make a motion to table this topic for now,
The next meeting.
to next meeting.
Before
Discussion
you
on that?
end, thank y'all. I can relate to you.
So we've got a motion to table this discussion point and a second,
Discussion on that? Just real quickly, Jerry, if I may.
please.
Matthew, while we're talking about 6.5, something a little bit different, I just want to throw this in here before we wrap things up. Has there been any discussion about the land use spacing and protected facilities? We made the change to RV, but we have that same type of language in here.
Right.
It's the same language, it seems to be, and we determined that with the RV part, that it's not, it should not be relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I still fear that under the right circumstances and the right size parcel, that if you go to adjust your property line or create a new property line in order to accommodate that land use spacing, then in one instance here, the ordinance basically steers an applicant in the direction of creating a non-conforming lot. and
Cutting
then-
off a sliver.
And then when you look at the subdivision ordinance, it's not approvable because it doesn't comply with subdivision regulations. So I do worry about that.
Because the neighbors had some concerns about
Cross-purpose
that.
guidance. But I have intentionally not even thought about messing with those buffers because one of the primary intents of the heavy industrial development ordinance is to set up that buffer and spacing between what you can assume will be an industrial property and nearby residential properties.
Yeah, but that language is in there that if it's a dwelling, you're measuring to the dwelling, not to the
Correct.
property
Correct,
line.
not to the property.
So they could make it non-conforming by moving a dwelling, if it was allowed to be put there within that area, make it a non-conforming use overnight,
Sure.
in theory.
Yeah, in theory, yep. Yeah, so it's something I'm concerned about, but I haven't.
Okay.
Wait, you're having a baby in July.
Yeah.
Don't.
So we need to hurry up. I'm not, my wife is.
We know.
But I'm gonna be as supportive as possible.
Comment six.
Okay, so we've got motion to table this discussion point and a second. Y'all wanna stop talking about it? Okay, all in favor, aye?
I make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Have you got any announcements?
I don't.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. See you, bye.
Appreciate you coming out.